Okay, so I'm going to get started this morning by just welcoming everyone. Welcome back. Welcome. Nice to see you guys. Today is the real core of this class. This is where things really get started. Yesterday, like I mentioned, was just kind of like to get you guys introduced to some of the teachings and kind of getting used to the classroom environment again and things like that. But today we're going to really go into the core teachings of the Buddha, which is the Eightfold Path. We're going to spend our entire morning on this and taking a mid-morning break where I'm going to introduce you and really go into detail about this core central teaching, which is the path to enlightenment. If you're interested in getting to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy, that is the enlightened mind, where you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, all of these feelings and others, and experience these important qualities like focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory, where your personal and professional relationships can really blossom and you're not even in a bad mood anymore. By the time you get to enlightenment, this is the teaching that you need, in addition to a lot of others as well. But this is the real starting point, is understanding this path. So I'm going to spend a lot of time going through this and helping you to be able to see how to learn the teachings, investigating them and examining them, understanding how to reflect on them to independently verify that they're true. And then you can practice them. And as you're integrating them into your life, that's where you're actually seeing the real results. So we're going to start with meditation. And then afterwards, we're going to move into sharing this discussion with you using the original words of the Buddha. So if you'd like to join for meditation, just like I taught yesterday, I'll start with the chanting to ease us into meditation. And remember, there's no rites or ritual or ceremony or worship with the chanting. So this chanting is just to help ease the mind into meditation. There's nothing mystical or magical here. It's not prayer or worship or anything like that. After the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance to help you guys understand how to actually be meditating while we're actually meditating. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're meditating together, everyone here and everyone online who's joining. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting as well. So you guys are welcome to join along in the chanting. We have the chanting sheets over there. And then, as I mentioned, after the chanting, I'll come back in with the guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma sati sata tawa manusanang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in naturally through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go, There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโพตังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรภูริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, once again, welcome to everyone. Nice to see all of you guys. Welcome to everyone online as well. This morning, we're going to be discussing the Eightfold Path. As I mentioned, this is the path to enlightenment. You're going to need to know this inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down. You're going to need to revisit this multiple times. You'll learn it maybe here today for the first time, but in terms of practicing it, you're going to need to really dive in over multiple times and actually learn it more than just one time and actually dial it into your life closer and closer. I'm going to introduce you into these three sections of the Eightfold Path, and then this afternoon, we're going to be discussing meditation. Now that you guys have had a chance to practice it 3 times with me, we're going to actually be going in and actually teaching it to you this afternoon. But this morning is all about this Eightfold Path, these 8 individual factors organized into these 3 sections. And I'm going to walk you through this in a way that you can learn, reflect, and practice. You can independently verify this. Remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't about belief. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. You're actually learning now, investigating and examining his teachings. You're reflecting now in the present moment to independently verify the teachings. And then you're practicing now in this life. And this is why you see the results now. By integrating these teachings into your life, you're starting to transform the mind and uproot those pollutions of mind that we talked about yesterday called the 10 fetters. So this Eightfold Path, one of the ways you can think about it is if you had a speaker system and you had a device that had 8 individual dials and you would like to get a better and better quality sound out of these speakers, you would kind of tweak these dials and get the sound coming out of the speakers with a better quality sound. And it's the same thing with your mind, that you can tweak these 8 dials dials, and you'll see that the mind starts performing more and more optimally. You'll see that focus and concentration, the clarity, the deep memory, your personal, professional relationships will be really blossoming. You'll get to the point where you're not even in a bad mood anymore, but you need to learn each individual factor and then gradually implement this into your life. Nothing that I teach you is going to be able to snap your fingers and instantly start doing it. You're going to need gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And as we go, as I've mentioned before, you guys are more than welcome to ask any and all questions. I'm going to be pausing at different times, and if you guys here at the temple could use the microphones, that'll really help out so that the people online can hear you. All you need to do is get a microphone and take it back to your seat. You can just keep it with you because you might have more than one question. Just press the gray button, the lights will come on, and you hold it up to your chin, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. They'll be able to hear you online. And those of you guys joining online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So we're going to first go into right view and helping you understand that so that you can understand what the Buddha taught on right view. And then I'm going to help you to be able to learn it, reflect it, and practice it. Okay, so here's what the words of the Buddha are on right view, this core central teaching of the Buddha. And what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view. So what the Buddha is doing here is he's pointing to another teaching. The Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that integrates all of his other teachings. And he's pointing here to a teaching called the Four Noble Truths. That's what he's saying is right view. And what I've done here is underneath of this line, I've put the top section of the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths goes on from here, but I've put this top section so you can build confidence that yes, what he's talking about here in right view is the Four Noble Truths. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually teach you the Four Noble Truths. This is where you can have a real breakthrough. You can understand the problem in your mind, the cause of it, the elimination, and the path forward. You can break through to understanding what's causing the anger and the sadness and frustration, because in the unenlightened mind, we tend to blame other people for these feelings. But what you're going to be able to see here today is how your mind is actually causing these feelings itself in a way that you can independently verify. And because your mind is actually causing these feelings, you can actually eliminate them. That's why you can get to enlightenment, that you don't have to rely on other people to do anything in order for you to get to peace and joy. You just need to train your own mind. So I'm going to walk you through understanding the Four Noble Truths. And in order to do so, I need to first teach you the three universal truths. Now, we refer to these as truths, the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths, because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true. Other people know that they're true. But in order for you to benefit, you need to know that they're true. And that's why you're interested in listening to the teachings with eager ears, where you're actively listening and processing what it is that I'm sharing with you to be able to then reflect and independently verify these. You're going to need to get to wisdom in order to be able to know that these are the truth. So let me show you how this works. Here's the intellectual learning of the universal truth of impermanence. The universal truth of impermanence is explaining to you that in the world around you, everything is constantly changing. Anything you can see, hear, smell, anything that you taste on your tongue, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, these are all impermanent. They're constantly changing. They arise, they change, and they fade away. This is impermanence. This is describing a conditioned object. Remember, the Buddha's teachings aren't explaining to you the way the world should be. He's not explaining to you rules and commandments. He's explaining to you the way the world is, because this is why the mind struggles in the unenlightened state, is it lacks wisdom of these natural laws. It doesn't understand the world that it lives in. So it struggles and has difficulties. So what he's explaining to you here, and what he's ultimately going to get to in the Four Noble Truths, is he's explaining to you the way the world is. The way the world is that all these objects around you are impermanent. They're constantly changing. They arise, they change, and they fade away. And this is going to be a key understanding to be able to be like a building block to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. So conditioned objects are impermanent, meaning they are not permanent. They arise, change, and fade away. There are things called unconditioned objects that do not arise, do not change, and do not fade away. The enlightened mental state is an unconditioned object. It doesn't arise, it doesn't change, and it doesn't fade away. The mind is unconditioned, and it's experiencing that peace and joy permanently. Also, the natural laws of existence themselves, those are unconditioned objects. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. The natural laws that existed during the lifetime of the Buddha are the same natural laws that exist today. And this is why his teachings are timeless, that what he taught 2,500 years ago, it applied then, but it also applies now because he's explaining these natural laws. Now, people's memories and the books and things like this, those things have all changed, but the natural laws themselves haven't actually changed. So these natural laws and enlightenment itself are an unconditioned object. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. They are permanent. Okay, so this is a little bit of the intellectual learning on the universal truth of impermanence, explaining that everything around you is constantly changing. Anything you see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind. This is change. Okay, but now you don't believe that, right? Because that's the intellectual learning. Just 3 minutes of teaching you the universal truth of impermanence. Now you start moving into reflection to try to independently verify if what I'm saying is true. That's how you're able to get to wisdom, to know the truth for yourself. And the way that you do this is you look around the world, because if you can find something that is permanent, that you can either see, hear, smell, taste, comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, then you've disproven this, and it's not a universal truth. So you start with things that you're familiar with, like the body. You're familiar with this body. You ask yourself, is this body permanent or is it impermanent? If this body is permanent, that means it's been exactly the same your whole life. It's never changed. If this body is impermanent, then that means it's been constantly changing. So what would you say? Is this body permanent or is it impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's constantly changing. Since the time of conception, when the egg and sperm came together, this body's been constantly changing, right? Our teeth came in, then they fell out, then new teeth came in, we got cavities, our hair grows, and then we cut it, and it grows some more. Then our hair changes colors, we lose our hair, we get wrinkles and moles and pimples, our complexion changes, we get taller, right? Sometimes people even get shorter, right, as they age, right? All this constant change with the physical body has been occurring. This is impermanence, okay? What about your relationships? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? If your relationships are permanent, that means you've had exactly the same people in your life your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, that means people have been coming and going in and out of your life throughout your entire life. So what would you say? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? Impermanent? What do you guys say? Are they permanent or impermanent? Your relationships. No answer? They're impermanent? Okay. So you can see your relationships are impermanent. People are constantly coming and going out of your life. What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or is it impermanent? What would you say? It's impermanent, right? It's constantly changing. It's going up and down and up and down, right? Some people's goes up, up, up. Some people's go down, down, down. It just depends, right? But your bank account's constantly changing. What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? Okay, so things are constantly changing. We could go on and on and on. And if this is what you need to do, then you should do that, right? You need to be able to independently verify this. When you're walking down the street and you're on the sidewalk and you see a crack in the sidewalk, that is impermanence, right? Here in Thailand, the sidewalks actually go up and down. That's impermanence. Some streets have sidewalks, some streets don't, right? You can look at the walls of the temple. You can see there's holes and marks and different things in the walls of the temple, right? This is all impermanence. You can look at the wood planks on the floor. You can see they're different color, different shape, different lengths, different textures, right? There's a certain number of people that started in the class, and now there's a different number that's in the class. This is all impermanence. It's just constant change, right? Somebody just got up and went to the bathroom. That's just change. That's all that is, right? It's just impermanence. Things are going to be constantly changing around you. Okay, so this is a universal truth that you need to deeply soak into the mind. When you look at a fence and you see that there's paint and then the paint is fading, that's impermanence. You look at a tree and you see green leaves in the tree and you see brown leaves on the ground, on the floor. This is impermanence. So this is a universal truth that everything around you is constantly changing. Then the second universal truth is explaining that the unenlightened mind. This is that the mind, this is the universal truth of discontentedness. This is what the unenlightened mind experiences, which is called conditioned feelings. Okay, some people translate this as suffering. If you've studied the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might see this as the universal truth of suffering. But I don't translate it that way, and you'll understand why when I teach it to you. I explain it as discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. So I'll explain this to you, then I'll circle back and I'll explain to you why I don't call it suffering. So when the Buddha describes the universal truth of discontentedness, he's describing conditioned feelings. He's explaining how the unenlightened mind experiences conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, it's going to experience these feelings. It experiences pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. Okay? Pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. These are very pleasant for the mind to experience. Then there's painful feelings, feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These are very painful for the mind to experience. Then there's neither painful nor pleasant. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category if you like. But shyness is a good example. It's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. Or if you take an example like this, like say you're on public transportation and somebody comes and sits really, really close to you and you don't know this person and your body is touching their body. You might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant. The mind is kind of like dissatisfied. It's uncomfortable in that situation. This is the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. So this is what the Buddha is explaining, how the unenlightened mind is experiencing these feelings. So for an unenlightened being, they might wake up in the morning and they see it's sunny outside. And they get so excited and they get so happy. Yes, this is going to be so fun. We're going to go outside and go hiking. I've been wanting to go on this hike for a long time. I'm going to call my friends. I'm going to call my family. We're going to go out on this hike. This is going to be so fun. I am so excited that it's sunny outside. And now they go take a shower and they take a shower and then they come out and they see it's raining. Now they're going to be sad. They're going to be frustrated. They're going to be irritated or annoyed. Right? This is called a conditioned feeling, that based on the condition that the sun is out, I will now be happy. But that condition is impermanent. So that means your happiness is impermanent. So if you base your inner feelings on a condition, then that means your feelings are not going to be permanent. You're going to experience the arising, the changing, and the fading away of that happiness. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because the mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. That if your bank account is here, you'll be happy. But if it goes here, you'll be sad. If your mom and dad do this, you'll be happy. But if they do this, you'll be sad or frustrated. If your boss or your friends or family do this, you're happy. But if they do this, you'll be angry or frustrated, right? If you get to go to Thailand, you'll be so happy and so excited. But if you show up to the airport and your flight's delayed or canceled, you'll be angry or frustrated, right? This is called conditional feelings. This is what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. It's going up and down and up and down. Sure, there's some calm and peacefulness here and there, but it's only a matter of time before the mind becomes annoyed or frustrated or agitated or some other feeling. This is called discontentedness. This is the problem that the Buddha discovered. This is discontentedness in the mind. Okay, an enlightened being doesn't experience this. An enlightened being has trained their mind to the point that their mind doesn't go up and down like that. An enlightened being, when they wake up in the morning, they're already happy. They're already joyful. They see it's sunny outside. Sweet, let's go hiking. This is going to be fun. I'm going to call my friends. I'm going to call my family. We're going to go hiking on a trail. Been interested to do this for a really long time. Let me go take a shower. You go take a shower. You come out. It's raining. Okay, well, it's raining, so I guess we're not going hiking. Well, I guess maybe we need to go to the movies, or I'll invite my friends over for dinner. I'll cook them some food. Maybe I'll stay home and read a book. No big deal, right? Just do something else, right? The mind wasn't basing its happiness on the sun. So when the sun is gone, the happiness is still there, right? But as long as your mind is experiencing conditional feelings, it can't experience permanent peace and permanent joy, because the mind's going up and down because it's basing its feelings on some condition. So the enlightened mind is beyond all of these conditional feelings. It's not experiencing this up and down and up and down. It's just always joyful. It's always happy. It's experiencing unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy. It's not happy because of anything. It's just happy all the time. It's peaceful all the time. It's joyful all the time. Okay, so this is explaining the unenlightened mind. Now, the way that you independently verify this is that you know that your mind is currently unenlightened. So what you do is you think about a recent time, you know your mind is unenlightened, so you know what the feelings are that you've experienced over the course of your life. And you think and look at this and you try to reflect, is there any feelings that you experience that doesn't fit into one of these three categories? Because what the Buddha is doing for you is explaining to you the unenlightened mind. So that means that if your mind is unenlightened and you experience various feelings throughout your life, then all those feelings should fit into one of these three categories. And if you're having trouble seeing how to do that, when we get to question period, let me know, and I'll be able to share with you how to be able to do that. But you should be able to take any feelings that you've experienced over the duration of your life and plug it into this, because it's describing what you experience on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so this is called the universal truth of discontentedness. Now, some people refer to this as suffering, because the original word in the Pali Canon and the original teachings is called dukkha. This word dukkha is often translated as suffering, but I don't translate it as that. I translate it as discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. And the reason why is because the word suffering describes the painful feelings really, really well. That when you're experiencing any of those feelings, you might say, yeah, you're suffering. But when you're happy or excited or elated, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering. Or when that person you don't know comes and sits next to you on the public transportation and your body's touching their body, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering in that situation. So if we use this word suffering, it only explains the painful feelings. That's only 1/3 of what the Buddha actually taught. That means you're missing 66% of his teachings on this important topic. And if you're missing 66% of the teachings of a teacher, how could you ever get to the ultimate goal? Right? So I don't use this word suffering because it doesn't accurately explain the full spectrum of emotions that the Buddha is describing here that the unenlightened mind experiences. It experiences other things besides suffering. But when you're happy and excited and elated and you're thrilled, your mind's discontent. It's shaken up. It's unstable. If you've ever been so excited that you tripped and fell, or you dropped something and broke it, then you know what I'm talking about, right? This is what the unenlightened mind experiences, this unstableness, this unsteadiness, this being shaken up. That's what this discontentedness is explaining. This universal truth of discontentedness is explaining how the mind is unstable and unsteady. It's shaken up. But suffering doesn't apply here. So wherever you see the word suffering in anybody's teachings, you can replace that with discontentedness, because that's what the Buddha is actually teaching you, that the mind is discontent. Then there's this universal truth of non-self. This is actually a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. Remember yesterday, we talked about the 10 fetters, those 10 individual problems that the Buddha discovered, those 10 pollutions of the mind. The fetter is that shackle and chain and the ball that keeps the mind trapped in the unenlightened state. That shackle, chain, and ball is what they used in ancient times to keep prisoners in a certain area. But now the Buddha is describing that these pollutions of mind are like fetters, because it's keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state. Right? So the very first fetter, the very first pollution that he describes is called personal existence view. This universal truth of non-self is the solution to this. Okay? So the personal existence view is where the mind is confused. It's lacking wisdom. It has misunderstanding. It thinks that this body and this mind is you and who you are. So there's a certain self-image that the mind clings to, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And then there's a certain identity that the unenlightened mind is clinging to. And as long as the mind is clinging to these things, you can't experience peace and joy. So for example, if you cling to this body and you think that this is you, when you spill something on your clothing in a social situation, you'll experience embarrassment because the mind wants to be perceived in a certain way, and the mind is confused thinking this body is you. And now when other people are perceiving you the way you want to be perceived, you feel happy. But when they're not perceiving you the way you want to be perceived, you feel sad or frustrated or embarrassed or some other feeling. Or if you've ever had a mole or a pimple or a wrinkle or gray hair, or you're starting to lose your hair, or you had a bad haircut, right? You might have felt like less of a person, right? And now you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived. So the mind gets shaken up in these situations. Or maybe, as I mentioned yesterday, you might have been like me when I was a teenager. I was in the mirror before school with the mousse and the gel and trying to put every little hair in exactly the right spot before I could go off to school and get on the bus. And oftentimes I would miss the bus because I was spending so much time trying to get every little hair in exactly the right spot. Or if you've ever put on clothes, looked in the mirror, and then you're like, nah, I don't want to look like that today. And then you changed your clothes, and then you kind of did this for a while until you got those perfect clothes that you were looking for, or that perfect combination of clothing and jewelry and hair before you could go outside. This is the mind's personal existence view. The mind thinks that this body is you, and now it wants to be perceived by others in a certain way, and you can't feel comfortable unless you're being perceived that way. This is the mind clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are. Then there's the self-identity. This is inside the mind. This is based on your culture, your ethnicity, maybe your nationality, your job or occupation, your sexual orientation, or anything like this. You might be clinging to an identity, like I am Chinese, or I am German, or I am American, or I am Lithuanian, or I am Israeli, or I am Canadian, or I am Spanish, any of this I am Brazilian, right? Or I am a police officer, or I am a doctor, or I am a lawyer, I am a Buddhist teacher. Any of this I am is the self-identity, and the mind's clinging to this, thinking that this is who you are, when in reality, this isn't who you are, right? So if you cling to this self-identity, if somebody says, all Americans are so lovely and kind and warm and gentle, right? I've never heard this before, but perhaps somebody might say that, right? If somebody said that, right, you might get all these pleasant feelings, right? And wow, they're talking about me. But then it's only a matter of time before somebody says something degrading and negative and disparaging about the country that you come from. And if you identify with that in your mind, now you're going to feel they're talking about you, right? So let's just say you were a police officer, and in your mind, you identified with, I am a police officer. And now you retire, or you get injured and you can't do the job anymore. You might feel like less of a person because you're not doing that role anymore. Your identity is not intact. Or say you had a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, and you identify with, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I am a wife. And now when you guys are together, you feel great. Your identity is intact. But then when you guys separate and I am single, your mind doesn't identify this way. So now you might felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. You might have felt like this was going to solve the problem, but that doesn't solve the problem because this personal existence view is what the problem is. The mind is identifying with I'm a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, but instead you are now single, right? So the mind can get lost and constantly trying to fill up the mind with any kind of identity, again, about your culture, your ethnicity, your nationality, your sexual orientation, your job or occupation. It can be anything and everything. I had one student one time that contacted me and he said, hey, I'm having all these problems and I don't understand it. I need your help. I said, okay, what do you got? He said, ever since COVID, I'm going into these different places and they're asking me to pay without any cash or anything like this. And they're turning around this computer screen and I have to punch in what it is that I'm going to purchase. And then I have to swipe my card or press my card, and then it deducts the money. And when they turn around the computer screen, it asks for a tip. It has like 20%, 25%, 28%. And some of these places are just places like I go in and I spend 30 seconds ordering a coffee and now they want a tip. He said, I am a great tipper and I feel so conflicted when I go into these places because they keep wanting me to tip and I don't tip. And I don't understand, why do I feel so uncomfortable in these situations? Because I'm not tipping. And I said, well, you have this personal existence view. Your mind is identifying with, I am a great tipper. And now when you're not tipping, you feel conflicted in that. So any of this I am in the mind that the mind's clinging to, this is going to hinder you from being able to get to the peace and the joy that is the enlightened mind. So you're going to need to purge this from the mind. Right? So people come to Thailand sometimes where they are at home and they say, I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't know who I am. I need to go find myself. I need to go find my true self. I need to go to Thailand and find myself. Well, you're not going to find yourself in Thailand, because what the Buddha is teaching with the universal truth of non-self is that there is no self. It doesn't exist. But the mind in the unenlightened state keeps longing, yearning, and trying to grasp onto something and say, this is who I am. Right? So somebody might feel so lost and confused in their home country, and they come to Thailand in search of themselves and trying to find themselves. They might find a new hobby. They might find new friends, new activities. They might find a new job, but none of that stuff is you. They might get to the end of their trip, 3 months, 6 months, a year. I found myself. I'm going to go back home now. I found myself. I know who I am. Right? And then they go back home, and now 2 years later, 5 years later, everything's changed, and now they don't know who they are anymore, right? Because they keep clinging to something and trying to say that this is who they are. But because of the universal truth of impermanence, all these things are going to change. So as soon as you cling to anything, thinking that this is who you are, as soon as it changes, you feel lost and confused, right? So this is the universal truth of non-self, is explaining to you that there is no self. But the mind in the unenlightened state is that there's confusion, thinking that there is a self. And this is where the real dilemma comes in. So again, you can independently verify this, right? Because you're not interested in believing any aspect of the teachings of the Buddha. You would like to independently verify, is there actually a self or not? So here's the way you do that. Think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and then now. Think about your personality and your character. Have you viewed yourself in exactly the same way during childhood, teenage years, early adulthood, and now? Or has your view of yourself been constantly changing? What would you say? Has it been the same way you look at yourself, or has it been constantly changing? You guys must be sleepy this morning. It's changing, right? It's constantly changing, right? The way you view yourself, right? Okay, so here's another way. If your arm is amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? So your arm's amputated, you only have one hand and one arm. Are you less of a person? No, you're not less of a person, right? You have less use of a hand and arm, but you're not less of a person. So this is where you can see intellectually, you understand this body is not you. Because if I asked you that question and you said, yes, I am less of a person, that's because this body is you. You have less body, so now you're less of a person, right? But you answered the question of, no, I'm not less of a person. So this is where the confusion comes in. The misunderstanding that the mind intellectually can understand that this body is not you. But in the situation where somebody says something degrading or disparaging about this body, you get angry, you get frustrated, you get irritated. That's the confusion of personal existence view. That's the lack of wisdom that the mind has. That's the misunderstanding and misperception of true reality. Here's another way you can independently verify this. Point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point? Anybody pointing? Usually what people do is they point here. Yeah, that's what they usually do. They point here or they'll point here. I am here, right? Well, you need to look at what you're pointing to. When you're pointing here, you're saying, this is me. What you're pointing to is this shirt, right? So if I took off my shirt and I held it up, is that who I am? Is that David? That shirt? That shirt you're wearing, is that you? Is that who you are? No, that's not you, right? Okay, so let's throw away the shirt. Now, I ask again, where are you? And someone might point. Okay, what are we pointing to? We're pointing to skin, right? So now let's look at the skin. Let's take off the skin, holding it up in my hand. Is that me? Is that who I am? Is that skin that you've got? Is that who you are? Is that you? It's not you, right? Okay, so let's throw away the skin. Where are you? Someone might point again. What do we've got? We've got ribs, we've got muscle tissue, we've got organs and fluid. None of that stuff is you. But the confusion that the mind has is it thinks that it is you. And that's the whole problem with this personal existence view, is that the mind is clinging to this body thinking that this is who you are. But none of this is actually you. And you can get liberated from the up and down feelings associated with this body and this mind by realizing non-self. This is what we refer to it as. When you get to the point that you've trained your mind, that you realize that there is no self, now you won't get angry and frustrated and irritated when somebody says something negative and degrading about this body or this mind. So it's a matter of, I can understand that this body was born on a land that we refer to as America, but I don't have to identify in the mind as I am American, right? So this land of America, it wasn't always called that, right? So this body was born in that place, but I don't have to adopt the identity of that's who I am. And the challenge is that we've all been, kind of incentivized and taught all through our life that there is a self here. In fact, the countries that we grow up in, we have flags, we have national anthems, we have incentives to say that we are patriotic if we stand behind our country and we put all of our identity into it and fight for our country and things like this, and we cheer for our sports teams and things like that. The mind is taught from birth to essentially identify with this as being who we are. In fact, we were all given labels at birth. I don't know what all your labels are, but I know the label I was given was David, right? That's a label. It just helps us to understand who we're talking about, right? So we've been taught all through our life to identify with something as who we are. And now when we get our label, like I am David, now we put all our personality and our character and our self-image and identity behind it. And we can actually get liberated from this. Because as long as we cling to any of these things, that I am this, now when that changes, you're going to feel lost and confused. Or you're going to fight and be frustrated and angry as long as you're clinging to any of this stuff. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions on the three universal truths before we go further. Do you guys have anything you would like to ask? I think I saw you have a mic here. Yep. And those of you online, you can ask questions as well. Mm-hmm. I think the mic's not on. Yeah. There it is.
Yeah, good. Mm-hmm. I found it helpful, your translation of dukkha, not suffering but discontentedness. That kind of seemed to resonate. The thing I am a little bit unclear about is I get why painful feelings could fall under the category of discontentedness, mm-hmm. but less sure why pleasant feelings would also fall under that category.
Sure. It's very intuitive to understand that we need to eliminate the painful feelings. The unenlightened mind can understand that. Like, yeah, let's get rid of the anger, the sadness, and the frustration. But you need to be able to see the conditional pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem. Because as long as the mind is forming its happiness based on some condition, that means as soon as that condition changes, you can't be happy anymore. So essentially what the unenlightened mind is doing is that if this condition is met, and 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 this condition is met, then I'll be happy, which means your happiness is very narrow. You can't be happy in all situations. And this is conditional happiness, and it's temporary. So therefore it's displeasing and unsatisfactory because it arises, it changes, and it fades away. If you allow your mind to get the conditioned happiness or the conditioned pleasant feelings, the painful ones are waiting right around the corner. And sometimes this is spread apart so far, you don't actually see it. I'll give you some examples. Let's just say that you get a brand new job and you're so excited because it has a really good salary, great location, excellent title, wonderful coworkers, the company has a great mission, and you're so excited about this job and you just can't wait to get in there on the first day of work. You're so excited. And now you take that job, and now for 3 to 5 years, you work in that job. But now let's just say 5 years later, the company goes out of business and they lay you off, right? Or you're fired or whatever, right? Now you're going to be sad. You're going to be frustrated and you're going to be angry because you allowed the mind to get those conditioned pleasant feelings. So that means the painful feelings are waiting for you right around the corner. And sometimes it's spread apart really far like that, but other times it's more close. Let's just say you go into a shopping mall and you see a brand new pair of shoes in the window and you get so excited, like, oh my goodness, look at those shoes. Those are going to look so awesome on my feet. I can't wait to get those shoes. This is going to be outstanding. You get so excited, right? And now you go into the store and you say 9.5, please. And they go to the back and they look, and they come out and they're like, sorry, we don't have 9.5. We only have 6 and 7s. Everything else has been sold out. Now you're going to be frustrated. So if you allow your mind to get the conditioned pleasant feeling based on some condition, now you're going to get the painful ones later. So what you're looking to get to is the unconditioned happiness, where the mind is just always happy, not based on any condition, that despite what's going on in the world, you can just always remain happy and joyful. And you can't do that as long as the mind is experiencing conditioned feelings. So you're essentially on this path to enlightenment is you're rewiring the mind. You're transforming the mind. You're training it to no longer experience conditional feelings. And that's where the liberation or the freedom from these strong feelings comes from, is that you've now rewired the mind to no longer form its inner feelings based on some condition. Make sense?
And so it's more the emphasis on the conditional dimension, that we allow our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings to be conditional on the external.
Yes.
That is the source of the discontentedness.
Yes.
And linked to which, when you were talking, for the first time I've realized when you talk about enlightenment, I guess it's the idea of being lightened from within. Is that right? For enlightenment rather than from without. So it's almost drawing that contrast between our happiness being dependent on the external, the conditional dimension,
right,
or that deep inner peace coming from it within, hence the enlightenment as a contrast.
Exactly. So sometimes we refer to it as attaining enlightenment, but another way to think about it is the mind is already enlightened, but there's these pollutions in the way that are hindering you from being able to experience it. So when you get the pollution out of the way, then the brightness and the radiance of the enlightened mind can shine through. And you'll understand this more when we get to the Four Noble Truths, which is next. Anything else? Yes, sir. Drew.
Is this working?
Oh, yeah.
Question about apathy. Is that discontentness, or is it an example of your mind not being in the middle, that is just dull and lethargic?
It depends on how you you said apathy, not empathy. Okay.
Apathy, so lack of interest.
How do you describe apathy?
So you're doing a task and it's just not interesting to you, like you just don't want to do it, for example.
Okay. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you can have fun and joy no matter what you're doing, but you are going to make certain choices about what you would like to do and what you're not interested in doing. But let's just say if you needed to do that, you'd be completely fine doing it, right? So like before enlightenment, you'll be washing the dishes and you'll be disgruntled and agitated and be like, why are all these dishes? Why didn't somebody else do them? Why do I have to do them? Blah, 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 right? You'll be kind of irritated. After enlightenment, when you're washing the dishes, it's just like, all right, well, let's just wash the dishes. Let's get it done and take care of it. Somebody's got to wash them. Might as well be me. Let me just take care of it and then be done with it. Right? You just move on with your day. It's an impermanent situation, 10, 15, 20 minutes of washing dishes, and we're done. Right? So you're not going to experience that disgruntledness, that underlying agitation of the apathy, that you can be peaceful and joyful no matter what you're doing in any situation. But you're still not going to do things like go to a brothel, for example, right? You're not going to do stuff like that. And you're not going to need to train your mind to be happy to go do those kinds of things, because it's unwise to go to those kinds of places, right? But the things that you're doing, the wholesome things, you'll be completely joyful and peaceful doing those things. You won't have that procrastination or lethargic condition, because that's on one side. But you're also not going to be chasing things either. You'll be in the middle where you can just gradually pursue goals and objectives.
Yep, thank you. And this will feed into a question I'll have about right livelihood, about apathy in your job, which I'll get onto when we get there.
You get to it then? Okay. So we have some questions coming in here. Janae is asking, when it comes to non-self, sorry, my eyes are, I was going to try to read it without taking the mic off. What is a person's personality? So the personality isn't part of the self. Even when you have no self, you'll still have a personality. What the universal truth of non-self is helping you to do is understand that you don't cling to this body or this mind as who you are. So let's talk about what the mind does so you can understand this. So if you have the idea in the mind that I am kind, right? I am kind. That is the mind clinging to a certain aspect of the mind itself and seeing this as who you are, that I am kind. So now when someone says to you, wow, you're such a kind person, you're so friendly, you get so excited. But then when someone says, you're the rudest person I've ever met, now you get upset, you get angry, because you think in your mind, I am kind, right? So that is the identity that the mind needs to let go of and not cling to it. But as part of your personality, you could be a kind person, and that's a quality that you're practicing, but your mind just doesn't cling to it as who you are as a person. So there might be some people that say, wow, you're really kind, you're really friendly. And if you have no self, you might just say, oh, thank you. I appreciate your kind words. Thank you so much. But now when this person over here says, you're the rudest person I've ever met, doesn't affect you because you don't cling to this as part of your identity. But if you cling to this and thinking that this is who you are, you'll be shaken up in these situations. So your personality is going to be your characteristics and the way that people view you as a person. Maybe you're funny, maybe you're jovial, maybe you're cheerful and bright. These are all qualities that you'll be practicing as part of your personality, but you won't cling to it as who you are as a person. That's the difference. Okay. Okay, let me see if we have anything on Facebook or YouTube. Okay, I'm not seeing anything else. Okay, so we're going to move on now to one more building block before we can understand the Four Noble Truths. This is another building block that you need to know. This is a way that we describe certain words. The way that you're using these words now might not be the way that we use them in Buddhist teachings. It's craving, desire, attachment, wants, expectation, grasping, holding. This is the longing and the yearning that the mind does. The mind pulling in the direction of the objects of its affection, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is providing some lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases it and chases it and chases it. The mind just thinks this external thing is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases after it. Right? So if you've ever been in the mall and you saw that new pair of shoes or that new jewelry or that new video game or new phone or new computer, and you were like, oh man, I just got to have that. Oh, that's going to be so amazing. I just want it so bad. I want it. Right? Or, oh, I need to go to Thailand. That's going to be so great. Let me go to Thailand. I just want that so badly. Oh, new house. That's what it is. I need a new house. A new car. That's what is going to fix everything. Let me get a new car. More money. That's what it is. I need more money. Let me chase after that for a while. Oh, boyfriend, girlfriend. That's what I'm missing in my life. I need a boyfriend and girlfriend to be happy. Since I don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend, that's why I'm unhappy. Let me chase after that for a while. Right? You guys know what I'm talking about? Where your mind's pulling towards something? Yeah? This is very pivotal, that you need to understand this craving, desire, attachment, this longing, this yearning. Okay? That's what we're talking about here with craving, desire, attachment. Okay? So now I can introduce you to the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is going to explain to you the problem in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is where you can have a breakthrough to finally understanding what's causing these feelings so that you can actually eliminate them. You wouldn't be able to eliminate them if you didn't know what was causing them. So the first noble truth is explaining the problem. The problem that you're experiencing is that everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. This is the problem that the mind has, is going up and down and up and down. Those conditioned feelings, that the mind is forming some feeling based on a condition. That's the problem that the Buddha discovered, that the mind's going up and down and up and down. Based on some condition, it's going to now form this feeling. The second noble truth is explaining the cause of this. The cause of discontentedness is our own cravings, desires, attachments. Because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. So the mind is craving permanence. It's longing, yearning. It's wanting things to be permanent. But in reality, you live in an impermanent world because of the universal truth of impermanence. Okay? So those pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, they're being caused by your own mind's craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning. If you get what you want, you get happy and you get excited and you get elated. But when you don't get what you want, your mind experiences the anger and the sadness and the frustration and these other discontent feelings. So I'll give you some examples here. Think back to the time when you got together with that new boyfriend or that new girlfriend. When you guys first got together, you probably were so happy. You're so excited. You're elated. This person's showing you affection. They're interested in you. Maybe they're asking you questions. You guys are having great conversations. Maybe you're going out to the movies. You're going to dinner. You're going for walks in the park, right? Maybe you're having intimate contact with each other. You're having great conversations. Oh, it couldn't be better, right? They're calling you and checking in on you, making sure you're doing okay. Wow, so wonderful, right? But now time goes on, and now there's all these expectations. You want certain things from this person that they can't do for you all the time. And they want certain things from you. And you can't fulfill their expectations all the time. And now you guys get angry and frustrated with each other. And you decide to end the relationship. And the relationship's over. And now you're angry. You're sad. You're frustrated. Maybe you feel lonely. Maybe you feel bored. Maybe you're missing this person. Okay, this isn't the love that's causing that. It's not your care that's causing that. What's causing it is the craving for permanence. The mind is craving for this person to be permanent in your life, when in reality, this relationship was always impermanent. The same thing's happening with grandma and grandpa. When grandma and grandpa die, or mom or dad, or brothers and sisters, when you're grieving and you're feeling sorrow, you're not a bad person. You haven't done anything wrong. What's happening is the mind is craving permanence. It's wanting them to be permanent. And as long as grandma and grandpa are alive, you're happy. You're getting what you want. Your cravings being fulfilled. But when you're meeting with this impermanence, that they've died, the unenlightened mind doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence. So now when grandma and grandpa die, your mind's struggling because it's craving permanence. It's wanting them to be permanent in your life. The same thing can happen at a wedding. If you've ever been to a wedding and people have been crying and grieving, or you've been crying and grieving, This should be a wonderful time. Someone's got a new relationship. They're going out into the world and doing wonderful things. But no, people can be grieving because now this person's going off into the world with someone else. And mom or dad or brothers and sisters, cousins can be crying because it's like, I thought they were permanent. They were in my life. I thought they were permanent. Now they're going away with somebody else. The mind doesn't understand this universal truth of impermanence. So it struggles. It lacks this wisdom. So now when this person's going away on their own, they really struggle. Or if you can think back to when you got dropped off at university or college, or maybe even further back when you got dropped off at kindergarten or pre-K, or if you've ever seen children that do that, they cry and cry and cry. Mom and dad might have cried even when they dropped you off at school, right? Because the mind's craving permanence, wanting this relationship to be permanent. And now when you're going off into the world, the individual struggles. Let me give you another example that doesn't involve relationships so you can see it even more clearly. Think about a time maybe if you've gotten a brand new car, or just imagine that there's this certain car that you really want and you saved up this money for 5 years, 10 years to purchase this car. And you go in and you pay this car in cash and you drive off the parking lot in this beautiful car, brand new car. You're driving down the street. Your friends are seeing you. It's like, wow, look at her. She's so successful. Wow, look at him. He's got that new car. Wow, he's so successful. And you're just so proud driving down the road in that new car. You park your car at the store and you go inside to buy something and you come outside and there's a scratch on your car and you get angry and you get frustrated. It's not the scratch that's causing that. And it's not the person who scratched your car. That's not what's causing the mind to be angry or frustrated. What's causing this discontentedness is the craving, the desire, the attachment, wanting this car to be beautiful permanently, when this car can't be permanently beautiful. It's just not possible, right? This car is going to have impermanence. The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to change colors. It's going to get ripped and torn. But as long as your mind is craving permanence, you'll be frustrated and agitated in that situation, right? So again, you're not interested in believing anything I say. You can independently verify this, right? Because what I'm sharing with you is your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. Your mind's causing it itself, right? And the way that you independently verify this is you look at a recent situation where you've been angry, you've been sad, you've been frustrated, you've been irritated or annoyed. It might have been this morning, it might have been yesterday, it might have been last week. At that time, you might have been trying to blame somebody else, because this is what the mind usually does with its lack of wisdom. It'll try to find someone else to blame for your feelings, right? But now look at this situation with these fresh eyes, with this new wisdom. What was it that your mind wanted? If you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy. But because your mind didn't get what it wanted, you experienced this anger, this sadness, or frustration. So take a look at it and see. Can you see it? Can you see what your mind wanted, what it was longing, yearning for? I've had students that say, no, teacher, I can't see it. You know, I went to work the other day. My house looked beautiful. I came home from work. My wife had this craft project all over the house. And when I walked in, I got frustrated. I got angry. How did my mind cause my frustration? I wasn't even there. She's the one who messed up the house. Isn't she the one who caused me to be frustrated? Nope. You went to work with an expectation, with a want, with a longing, with a yearning that your house was going to look exactly the same when you came back home. And when you came back home and you saw this impermanence, your mind was craving permanence. You were craving for this house to look a certain way. And it didn't look that way when you came home, and now you were frustrated, and now you're angry. But just like your house couldn't look like that permanently, this craft project that your wife has, that's not permanent either. She's going to put it away, and maybe you even help her with it, right? So the mind in these situations is craving permanence, and you may or may not be able to see it. And that's where you reach out and you get help from your teacher. So if you guys have questions and you would like to ask me like, hey, can you help me with this? I don't see how my mind's craving permanence. I will help you, because this is the breakthrough that you can have, that if you can see that it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing these feelings, then you can actually get to a point where you eliminate them. Because when your mind is lacking wisdom of the second noble truth, there's a few things that you might end up doing. In your relationships, when you're experiencing anger and sadness and frustration or other painful feelings, you might falsely attribute that to somebody external or something external, and you push those people away. You might have done this in your life, where you've pushed people away or you push the situation away. This is called aversion. The mind thinks, it firmly believes that the problem is external, and it thinks that if I push this person away, that will solve my problem. But it doesn't actually solve the problem, because you can see that your mind still gets annoyed. You still get frustrated. You haven't solved the problem. If that was the real cause of the problem, when you push those people away or you push that situation away, you'd be peaceful and joyful for the rest of your life. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem. So when you push people away or you push a situation away with aversion, you're not actually solving the problem. You're just losing a relationship. You're not living harmoniously with all beings. Or the second thing you might do, you might be bitter and harsh and hostile with your intentions, your speech, and your actions. I'm sure we've all done that, right? Where you've been bitter, harsh, and hostile with people, and they might have chosen to leave out of your life, because this is like a animal growling and roaring at another animal. It's like, "Rrrr." And now you're trying to fear that person into doing things your way, because the mind's trying to get its cravings fulfilled. The mind thinks if I can just get it my way, then everything will be perfect. Or the third thing you might do is you might put your expectations on people, and you might try to control people and force them to do things your way. And in all three of these situations, you can't live with all beings harmoniously, because you're pushing people away, you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile with them, and they might choose to leave out of your life. Or you put your expectations on people and you try to control them to do things your way, and they might choose to leave out of your life because of that, right? So you might have been in arguments where you were adamantly trying to convince somebody to do things your way, that they had to stop doing what they were doing because they are making you angry. And you might have firmly believed that that's what you needed to do in order to fix this problem. But the thing is that there's 8 billion people in the world. You can't get 8 billion people to do things your way. It's impossible, right? If you like to try, you could. You could launch an entire training program where all throughout the world you train 8 billion people to do things your way. And there's new people being born all the time. So you're going to have a massive training program and manuals, training centers, staff that is supporting you and behind you, and that everyone in the world is going to do things your way. You could do it that way and see how far you get with that. Or you could just train one mind. There's one mind that you're actually able to train. Do you know whose mind that is? Your own mind, right? So if you just trained this mind that you've got to understand craving, desire, attachment, and impermanence, and that not everyone's going to do things the same way, you can get to peace and you can get to joy. So there's a whole path that the Buddha teaches to be able to help you do that. So the way that you get to the peace and joy is the third noble truth, is the elimination of discontentedness is by eliminating cravings, desires, attachments. If you can eliminate the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, the forming of conditioned feelings, that if this happens, I will be happy, and if that happens, I will be sad. If you can eliminate that from the mind, then you can get to the peace and joy. You can eliminate the discontentedness. The fourth noble truth is explaining the way to do that. The path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. This is the complete, perfect plan that's going to show you how to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. And that's why we start with that this is called right view. What right view is maintaining the responsibility and the accountability that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. The moment you look to somebody else for the reason why you're feeling the way you're feeling, that's wrong view. Wrong view would be to blame other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. Right view would be to maintain that it's your own mind that's causing this, is look inward and figure out what are the cravings, desires, attachments. So now that you've learned, you've reflected a bit on the Four Noble Truths, the way you practice right view is you look inward and you try to uncover what are the cravings, desires, attachments that are causing this discontentedness to arise. Because if you keep blaming other people and you keep pushing them away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and putting your expectations on people, you'll never solve your problem. You're just going to stay angry for the rest of your life. You're going to stay stuck in this continuous cycle over and over and over and over again. Because when you feel those painful feelings, what you'll tend to do is you'll crave. You'll chase money, music, drugs, alcohol, sex, some other thing. You'll chase those things to try to get pleasant feelings. But then when those conditions change, your mind's going to end up right back in the painful feelings again. You might have noticed this, that you were feeling miserable, so you chased after a boyfriend or girlfriend for a while. And then you got one, you felt happy and excited, but then in a matter of months, you were angry and frustrated and irritated all over again. And then when you were there, you're like, okay, let me chase some money for a while. And then you started chasing that and you got it, and then you felt happy, but then you didn't feel happy anymore after that. It wore away. Right? So this is like this cycle that the mind is stuck in over and over and over and over again. So you can get liberated from this, but it starts with right view. You need to start with the foundation of right view, maintaining this right view that the problem is actually inside your own mind. And this is right view. Okay? So do you guys have any questions on the Four Noble Truths and how to independently verify that your mind is causing these feelings itself? So Janae is asking, why does the mind crave permanence? The reason why is because of its ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom that the mind has. That's the top level problem. And that's why you're always guided to cultivate wisdom. Because of the mind's lack of wisdom, the mind's misunderstanding and its confusion, it continues to crave. So it stays stuck in this constant craving. And as long as there's craving, then there's going to be anger and sadness and frustration, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. That's going to always come about. So that's why the ultimate goal is to always cultivate wisdom of how to train your mind to eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments. Okay. Let's see. All right. So we don't have any other questions there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now move on to right intention, helping you guys understand this. So it won't take me as long to teach you this. Right view is really big and meaty, and it's so important. So that's why you need to spend a lot of time to understand it. But right intention is really straightforward. Right intention, or sometimes people translate it as right thinking or right thought. There's three aspects to it. You need to be able to cultivate the thinking or the thought. Here's the Buddha describing it. In what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This, monks, is called right intention. So there's three aspects here. The intention or thinking or thought of renunciation. That's like letting go and giving up your false beliefs, your false opinions, your false views, and your unwholesomeness. There's certain things you're doing that are unwholesome and that are unwise. You're going to need to be willing to let those go. If you just hold on to them, you'll never get to enlightenment. So the Buddha is teaching you that you need to have an open mind. You need to be willing to let go of your unwholesomeness, which includes the false beliefs, false opinions, and false views. One of the first false beliefs that you need to let go of is the belief that everyone else is making you angry, that everyone else is annoying you, that other people are causing you to be frustrated. You need to let that belief go. But the way the teachings of the Buddha go is you don't get rid of your false beliefs and bring in new beliefs. That's not what you're doing. You're bringing in wisdom that you can see that your beliefs are false. And now you get rid of your beliefs, and now you have wisdom. You can see the truth for yourself. You need to get to the point where you now and forever know with 100% certainty that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. And you can see it clear as day. When you go out into the public and you see people being angry and bitter and hostile and harsh, you can see that there's some craving that they have and it's not getting fulfilled. You can see it in your life. So when you see this wisdom through the teachings of the Buddha, you need to be willing to let go of your false beliefs and your false views and your false opinions. Because if you get angry and sad and frustrated now, that means there's certain false beliefs that you have in your mind. You don't have full wisdom yet. You haven't attained what's called final knowledge. When you attain final knowledge, your mind will be completely peaceful and joyful for the rest of your life. Right? Your mind will be in that permanent mental state. But as long as you hold on to what you currently believe, you will never be able to experience enlightenment. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you first right view. He's showing you what the problem is. And then he's saying, you're going to need to be willing to let go of some things because there's things that your mind's holding on to that aren't serving you very well at all. right? So that's the intention of renunciation, the willingness to let go. Then there's the intention of non-ill will. Non-ill will is a double negative. So the same thing as saying non-ill will is like goodwill, or a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, or loving kindness. The opposite of non-ill will is animosity and bitterness and anger and hatred and all those lesser versions like frustration and agitation or annoyance. You're not looking to practice that. As long as you're practicing that, you're putting out harm, and this harm is going to come back to you. So you would like to get to the point where you're practicing active goodwill towards all beings, a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is called loving kindness. Okay, so you need this intention or this thinking or this thought that you would like to see all beings be well. Understanding that it's them that is responsible for their wellness, but you need to maintain the thinking or the thought that you would like to see all beings be well. And then the intention or the thinking of the thought of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to other beings. That's what harmlessness is, where as long as you're putting out harm, this harm is going to come back to you. So you need to have the thinking or the thought of harmlessness, where you're disinterested in causing harm to other beings. So this is an intention that you need to cultivate in the mind. And there's meditation techniques that the Buddha gives you to be able to cultivate non-ill will and harmlessness. And that's something that I teach in other programs, right? This loving kindness meditation is what's going to help you to be able to cultivate the mind with the intention of non-ill will and harmlessness. Okay, so this is the intention of renunciation, or the intention, right intention. There's three aspects to right intention: the intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, and the intention of harmlessness. Okay, so just to summarize this, is right view is the Four Noble Truths, which is explaining to you the problem, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. The problem is discontentedness. The cause of it is craving, desire, attachment. The elimination of it is to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And the way forward is the Eightfold Path. That's what's teaching you. That's the complete perfect plan of how to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. You need to maintain the responsibility and accountability for your own feelings, your own thoughts. As soon as you start blaming other people, this is actually wrong view. You need to maintain the responsibility for your own feelings and your own thoughts and your own emotions. Okay? Your feelings, intentions, speech, and actions, they're all coming from you. Somebody else isn't making those decisions for you. You're making those yourself. Then there's right intention. This is the practice of the intention of renunciation, non-ill will or loving kindness, and then the intention of harmlessness. These three aspects, having the thinking or the thought of letting go and understanding that you're going to need to let go of certain things that your mind's holding on to now. As you're bringing in this wisdom, you need to be letting go of these false beliefs and opinions and views. Then the intention of non-ill will or loving kindness, this active goodwill towards all beings. The thinking or the thought of harmlessness, the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Okay, so any questions on this section? No? Okay. Oh, we have a question coming in online. So I have a feeling this is from Janae. Yep, from Janae. So if the intention of renunciation is a part of right intention, then does that mean the complacency is a part of wrong intention? So complacency, we describe it. So let me just explain what complacency is. Complacency is the dullness, the lethargic condition, being disinterested in actually applying your effort and energy to growing and developing on the path to enlightenment. When the mind is complacent, this is a hindrance to your enlightenment, because as long as you're complacent, where you're disinterested in reading or coming to the temple, learning from your teacher, meditating, even if you allow an unwholesome thought in your mind and you don't take action, this is complacency, right? Where the mind is dull and lethargic. So we don't think about it in terms of practicing as part of right intention, but instead what you're doing is you're understanding that it is a hindrance to your enlightenment, and then there's certain solutions that you need to apply in order to eliminate the complacency. And the solutions are part of the 7 factors of enlightenment. So I don't think about it here in terms of this right intention, but I see why you're thinking of it that way, because renunciation and kind of letting things go, in order to get rid of complacency, you do need to let things go. But you need to be able to keep it very clear that renunciation is letting go, right? So not only do you need to let go of complacency, but you need to let go of many other things as well. So complacency isn't part of right intention, but the quality of renunciation and the intention of renunciation is what's going to help you to eradicate complacency. Okay. Let me see if we have anything on Facebook or YouTube. Don't see anything there. So it's basically 10:40. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a break, give you guys a chance to rest. And when we come back, I'm going to teach you this moral conduct section and the mental discipline section. Because what we've just done is we've built a really nice, strong foundation to be able to help you understand why you would even be interested in improving your speech, actions, and livelihood. It's because you're disinterested in causing harm in the world. And now the Buddha is going to teach you the natural laws of how to not cause harm through your speech, actions, and livelihood. So I'll explain to you guys more about this after break. So if you'd like to take a break up to 11 o'clock, I'm going to restart at 11 o'clock and continue forward with the Eightfold Path. So thank you guys for your questions and your interest to learn, and enjoy your break, and I'll see you guys at 11. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started since it's 11 a.m. So we're going to move into this next section of the Eightfold Path, which is the moral conduct section. And whenever you're studying moral conduct from the Buddha, it's important to understand that he's not teaching you rules and commandments. That's not what it actually is. He's helping you to understand the natural laws of existence, and understanding these natural laws is what's going to awaken your mind to be able to make wise decisions that lead to wholesome results in your life. Whereas if you make unwise decisions, it's going to lead to unwholesome results. So what he's essentially teaching you in the moral conduct section is this natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result. That's what you're awakening to. When we talk about awakening to enlightenment, it's to cultivate wisdom around the natural laws, and namely this natural law of karma. Some people refer to it as karma. You might have heard that. That's from the Sanskrit language. The word karma is from the Pali language, but it's referring to the same exact natural law. If this translated to just one English word, I would just use that because it'd be easier for everyone. But unfortunately, it doesn't translate to just one English word, so I need to actually explain it. What the natural law of karma is its cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's not a black cloud that's following you around. There's no entity that's controlling this and deciding who gets punished and who gets rewarded. It's actually like a sequence of events, that there's a certain decision that is made, and because of that, there's going to be a certain result, right? And if you make decisions wisely, it's going to produce wholesome results, or wholesome karma. And when you make decisions unwisely, it's going to produce unwholesome results, or unwholesome karma. So this is the results of your decisions. Your life, your decisions, and your results. And when we make decisions around our moral conduct, it's going to produce either wholesome karma or unwholesome karma. So we're either going to experience wholesome results or unwholesome results based on our wise or unwise decisions. Well, if you haven't studied the natural law of karma and you haven't studied the Eightfold Path, you wouldn't know what is wise in terms of your moral conduct. So that's what the Buddha is guiding you to understand, is the wisdom behind these natural laws and a wise way to conduct yourself in the world through your moral conduct, through speech, actions, and livelihood. Because as long as you're causing harm, harm will come back to you. So one of the things that he set up for you at first with the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path is helping you understand that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. Because one of the things that happen is when we're bitter, harsh, and hostile in the unenlightened state, you might think that other person deserved it, right? Because they're the ones who made you angry. They deserved it, right? Well, that's not actually true. Your mind actually caused these feelings itself. So when you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile in your relationships, you're just putting out harm, and that harm is going to end up coming back to you. So that's why he starts off the Eightfold Path, helping you understand that your mind is causing these feelings itself. And when you understand that, and then you understand right intention, to the intention of renunciation, to let things go, the non-ill will and harmlessness, now it's time to build on top of that this moral conduct. Because when you improve your moral conduct and the way you're interacting in the world, this is where you'll experience real improvement. Because as long as you allow the pipe to burst and the pipe is spraying water all over the place, you've got a real mess to clean up, right? So what the Buddha is going to teach you here is how to stop spewing this harm all over the place through our moral conduct. So he's teaching you the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result. So here's right speech. I'll use the words of the Buddha, and then I'm going to help you to understand this through examples and things like this. He says, "In what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech." Okay, so here he's talking about 4 aspects of speech that could be harmful, and that now if you are practicing these things, then it's going to actually produce harm in the world, and you're going to experience unwholesome results. And underlying each one of these 4 types of speech, there's some craving, desire, attachment there. Because remember, the Eightfold Path is there to help you eliminate craving, desire, attachment. That's what the whole Eightfold Path is about. Because as long as you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you're going to experience discontentedness. So for example, lying. When someone lies, there's a craving that is in the mind. There's something you're longing, yearning for. And if you tell the truth, you're not going to get what you want. So the mind lies in order to be able to get what it wants, right? So this is why you would like to get rid of this. And also, when we're lying, then people discover our lies and they find out that we're not dependable, we're not trustworthy, we're not reliable. And now we struggle in our personal and professional relationships. So when there's that great new project coming up at work and they would like to staff somebody, they're not going to look to you if you ended up lying and people don't see you as someone that's being trustworthy and dependable, right? So in your community, both personally and professionally, if you're lying, you're going to find it very difficult to exist in your relationships. And if you've ever done a lot of lying, then you know that your mind was kind of obsessively trying to figure out, what did you say to one person versus what did you say to another person and another person? So in order to get to this peaceful and joyful mind, you're going to need to get to the point where you're always telling the truth, that you look inward and you're telling the truth, right? So this will help you to gain your peace and your joy and eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. Then there's refraining from slander. What slander is like gossip, where you're trying to damage somebody's reputation, either a person, an organization, a company, or something like this. If you're gossiping about other people, this is going to produce harm, where you're harming someone's reputation. And there's an underlying craving that's in there, right? Usually what the mind is thinking is like, if I make these people look bad, then I will look good. Right? This is kind of like going into a room and there's this dark room that you go into and you put out other people's candle because you think that your candle is going to shine brighter if their candle is out. But in reality, if all of our candles are shining, then the room becomes brighter. Right? So it doesn't make sense to put other people's candle out. And if you're doing this, if you're slandering and gossiping people, there's the potential to get beat up. Even people have been murdered in these situations. If you can look in the world around you, you can see that there's like investigative reporters that get on the news and they report something and they're disparaging somebody through their investigative reporting, and they oftentimes end up dead. Right? You can see this in the world. Remember, the Buddha's teachings aren't explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And if you gossip and slander, there's the potential for you to get beat up and even murdered, right? At the very least, there's going to be people that are gossiping and slandering about you. Because if you get a group of people used to listening to you gossip and slander, when your back's turned, they're going to be gossiping and slandering about you. You can guarantee that. That's because of what you're putting out. It's just going to come back to you. So if you eliminate slander and gossip, this is going to promote a better and better wholesome life for yourself, more wholesome karma. Then the Buddha teaches to refrain from harsh speech. This is your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. The way you choose to interact with your speech really matters. So you need to pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. When you're speaking harsh, there's some craving, desire, attachment that you have in your mind. There's something you're longing, yearning for. And now you might be speaking harsh in order to try to convince these people to do things your way. And as long as you're speaking harshly, there's some craving, desire, attachment that's underlying it. So you would like to get to the point where you're speaking gentle, where you can adjust your tone, your tempo, and your word choice to be able to be loving and kind in the way that you speak. And you can speak gentle, and you can speak very warmly. Then there's frivolous speech. What frivolous speech is we also refer to it as idle chatter, where the mind is just like yada, 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 just frivolously speaking. There's no real point behind it. There's no purpose. There's no beneficial thing that's occurring. It's just yada, 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 yada. If you've ever done this before, people were probably like, oh my goodness, when are they going to stop talking? Oh, it's not even a conversation. It's like broadcasting, right? And there's an underlying craving there, that the mind is craving to talk, and it's just talking and talking and talking and talking and talking, right? So you would like to get to the point where you're speaking beneficially. Your speech is clear, it's concise, it's purposeful, and you can speak in a way that people can understand, and they don't have to do a lot of work to figure out what it is that you're actually saying. And then you can be influential in the community that you're in. Right? So eliminating frivolous speech is what the Buddha is teaching you here, to eliminate these cravings and get to the point where you can have wholesome karma or wholesome results in your life. Then there's a deeper level of teaching that integrates into the Eightfold Path about speech. It's called the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And this is ultimately what you would like to get to, where you're speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, it's gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. Speaking at the proper time is making sure, for example, that you're not interrupting people, right? If people interrupt you, you don't like it. and you don't enjoy those conversations where people jumping in on top of you to try to talk. So you would like to refrain from that. Another aspect of speaking at the proper time is making sure that your mind is prepared to speak. If you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're agitated or annoyed, that's not the proper time to speak. And in situations where you've done that, you can see that it didn't turn out well for you, because it's a natural law that if your mind is angry and frustrated and agitated and you're putting that out into the world, it's not the proper time for you to speak, and it's producing unwholesome results for you. And the third aspect of speaking at the proper time is making sure the other person their mind is the proper time for them. If they're angry, if they're frustrated or agitated, it's not the proper time to speak. So let's just say you're at home and you get a notice in the mail that you haven't paid your rent. And now you've got 3 days to pay your rent. And now your roommate or your life partner comes home from work and you like jump on them right away. That's not the proper time for them to speak, right? What you would like to do is have them come in, put their bags down, take off their shoes, get some water, get some food, maybe 30 minutes, an hour. Hey, honey, or hey, roommate, is this a good time to talk about something important? And they might say, yeah, sure. What do you got? And then you share it with them. Hey, by the way, we should probably pay our rent. Looks like we forgot to pay our rent, right? Or they might say, no, it's been a really hectic day at work, right? I can't talk right now, right? I'd rather talk about this tomorrow. Well, if you don't have a craving, you should be completely fine with that. You should be like, all right, sure. Yeah, we'll talk tomorrow. Get some rest. We'll chat about it tomorrow, right? No big deal. Right? So you like to speak at the proper time where you're not interrupting people, where your mind is prepared to talk. It's the proper time for you, and it's the proper time for other people as well. That's the way you would like to be able to practice. Then speaking the truth. We talked about this at the first part where you're not lying, right? This is going to help you to be dependable, reliable, and trustworthy in your relationships, because people are going to discover your lies, and then you're going to have difficulties in your relationships. And your mind's going to be obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person versus another. And you're not going to be able to experience peacefulness. But if you just look inward and figure out, what do I need to say here? What is the truth? And you just say that, you never have to worry about any issues of people discovering any lies or anything like that. And then speaking gently, this is the same as the one at the top. The Buddha just wording it a little bit differently, right? That you pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. The way that you speak really matters. So if you can have a gentle tone, tempo, and word choice, then this is going to make it really well for you. And you're going to need to look at the language that you're speaking, because the other people around you probably aren't speaking that way. Whether it's English or some other language that you know, the other people around you probably aren't speaking gently. And you can't follow what other people are doing because they're stuck in the darkness. They're stuck in the anger and the frustration, and you're looking to rise above that. So if you just conform to what other people are doing around you, you're not going to be able to cultivate your mind and develop your mind to this enlightened mental state. So no matter what language you speak, you're going to need to be able to look at that language and figure out how to speak gently with your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. Speaking beneficially is making sure that you're clear and concise and precise in the way that you speak. It's not really about the topic that you're talking about. It's more about how you speak, that you speak with a clarity, with conciseness, with preciseness as you speak, that it's purposeful and beneficial for others, where you're not just yada, 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 yada. Well, of course, sometimes when you first meet somebody, it's like, hey, where are you from? It's like, oh, I'm from Italy. Oh, great. How's it like in Italy? Or, what do you do in Italy? You might be having these kinds of conversations with people. So it's not about the topic, because in this situation, it's beneficial. You're getting to know somebody. You're getting to know a new friend or a new individual, maybe a coworker or something like that. So it's not about the topic. It's about that you're clear and concise and precise in the way that you speak. And then you would like to wrap all of this in a mind of loving kindness, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. The opposite of this is inner hate. If you were to speak with inner hate, then this isn't going to go well for you in your conversations. And you know that when you've done that, it hasn't gone well, right? So these are the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. And now what you do is you don't believe any of these teachings, just like I've been teaching you guys. Don't believe any of it. Instead, you reflect on it and see if it's true or false. So what you do is you take a situation where maybe the conversation didn't go well. It might have been recently or sometime last month or last year where the conversation just erupted and it didn't produce wholesome karma. You experienced unwholesome karma in that situation. Maybe you lost a friend. Maybe you damaged a relationship or what have you. You can look at these 5 factors of well-spoken speech and you can see that you and or the other person wasn't using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Even if you just missed one factor, there's a potential for this conversation to have gone unwell, right? And now you maybe damaged a relationship. So if you missed one or more of these factors, the conversation didn't go well. So you can independently verify it that way. But then you can also look at the other side of you. In order to bring your practice up to this, is that you start dialing this in closer and closer, and you get to the point where you're consciously practicing these 5 factors, and you dial it in every single one of your relationships. In the relationships where you have craving, desire, attachment, you'll find it the most challenging. So like with your parents or your siblings or your life partner, or if you have children, you'll find it very challenging to speak in this way because you have craving, desire, attachment. What the Buddha is guiding you to be able to do is eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments by speaking in ways that is beneficial for your mind so that you can get rid of those. And now you can be free of those strong feelings, right? So what we're talking about here is developing what we refer to in the Thai language as barami. This is a Thai word. Barami. What this means is the one who people listen to. This is a quality that people practice here in Thailand. Now, when you're speaking this way, you develop barami. You're the one who people listen to. So in a lot of villages here in Thailand, there's kind of like certain village elders that people know like they have barami. They're very successful in life. And when I say successful, I mean they're successful in their relationships. They have very harmonious relationships. Not talking about wealth or money. They have successful relationships. And people know they have barami. They're the ones who people listen to because they're very wise and they have very successful relationships. So if you have a problem in your life, you know you can go talk to these village elders and they will help you, right? So you could actually be one who people listen to in your personal life, in your professional life, if you're interested in developing that, where people are influenced by the things that you have to say, and they realize that you're wise and that you can be helpful to other people, you would need to establish barami. You would need to establish being the one who people listen to. And the way that you establish that is through modifying your speech. And it's not going to happen overnight. 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, you're speaking this way with all the people around you. And more people realize like, wow, she's so smart, or wow, he's so wise, because you're not harming anybody through your speech. Because while we call this right speech, that's because during the lifetime of the Buddha, that's all that there was speech. But nowadays we have lots of ways to communicate. So we might actually think about this as right communication. We would like to speak in ways, not only verbally, but in our text messages, our voice messages, our social media, our emails, and all of this stuff. We would like to have right communication. So if you're really angry and bitter and hostile, and you're over at your keyboard pounding on the keyboard to write an email, that's not the proper time to be communicating. Right? You might decide to hit save on that email instead of send, right? And now come back a few hours later, a few days later, and look at that email and be like, does it really make sense for me to actually send this email, right? And you might decide, no, this is actually nothing but anger and hostility. I'm not going to send this email today, right? And I'm going to maybe reword this, or I'm going to start from scratch and start over again. Right? So you would like to practice these 5 factors at all times. Because if you went into a job interview and you like knocked it out of the park and you did really, really well, and then they were planning to hire you and they looked at your social media and you're bitter and harsh and hostile on your social media, you're probably not going to get the job, right? So if you communicate in all parts of your life and using these 5 factors, you'll be able to see that things will really open up for you and your relationships will really blossom. Okay, so these are the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, and this is right speech from the Eightfold Path. In the book, I go into it in detail. I talk about each one of these factors in detail, giving you examples. So that's why you like to read the book and use it as a reference, because you're going to see a lot of details in there about speech. Because we can harm in tremendous ways through our communication. We've done a lot of harm. You've been in arguments and you've lost relationships because of this. But you can end this. You can get to a point where you have nothing but harmonious relationships, where you don't have to constantly struggle with these people coming in and out of your life all the time. You can just have really warm and friendly and loving relationships all around you. So if you'd like to read the book, you're going to see a lot of details about speech and communication there. So if you have difficulties remembering the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, because you're going to need to dial that in, and you're going to need to gradually be practicing that, because that's the natural laws. But if you're having difficulties at any point, you might decide to try to remember this: speaking polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. If you can remember this can be really helpful. So in that business meeting where you're drawing a blank and you're trying to communicate, remember to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. But ultimately, you're going to need to learn the 5 factors of well-spoken speech and really dial that into your life really closely. But this can be a way to actually help you if you remember speaking polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. Because you can think that you're speaking in all the best ways, but if you're not using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, it's not actually harmless. You're still potentially causing harm in your speech. And that's why you've gone into conversations before and you've been having a conversation with all the best intentions in the world, and the conversation blows up on you. And you're like, whoa, what just happened? Right? Because you don't have the wisdom of understanding the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And that's why things went off the rails for you. But if you can learn these 5 factors and dial them in, you'll see each and every one of your conversations go wonderful. Okay? So you'd like to pay a lot of attention to your speech. Then the Buddha teaches right action. Here's his words. He says, "In what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action." So he's not giving you a complete exhaustive list here. He's giving you 3 things, but there's other things that you could do that could harm as well. He's teaching you not to kill, to steal, or have sexual misconduct. And when we talk tomorrow, when we discuss the 5 precepts, he's going to expand this for you. Here, he's just talking about it in a very summarized form, but in the 5 precepts, he gives you much more illuminating language that is going to fully explain to you how to practice this in more detail. Here is just a very brief little bit that he's giving you. Essentially, what he's teaching you is to not cause harm through your bodily actions. He's giving you 3 impactful ones that could potentially cause harm, but there's others as well, right? If you understand right action, then you understand it's unwise to walk up to somebody and punch them in the face. Because if you did that, they're probably going to punch you back. That's your unwholesome karma coming back to you. Because you caused harm, harm is coming back to you. Or they might pull out a knife or a gun or something like that. Or their friends or their family might start attacking you, right? This is the unwholesome karma based on your decision of cause and effect. You punch someone in the face and now there's going to be this unwholesome karma coming to you because you harmed somebody. Also, notice the Buddha doesn't say it would be unwise to drag your suitcase through the aisle of a plane, running over people's feet and bumping into their knees, right? He didn't say that because there was no planes during his life, right? So he's not giving you an exhaustive list, but if you're smart enough and you're intelligent enough, you can take what he's saying here and you can realize that you should apply it to all bodily actions. Even when you're walking down the street and you bump into somebody, you realize that that's unwise. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir." Or, "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. I apologize." Right? And you kind of say something nice to kind of clean that up a little bit, right? So you would like to apply this to all parts of your life. And here the Buddha is just giving you 3 impactful ones, but you would like to look at all parts of your life. And the way that you move about the world is ensure that you're not causing harm through your bodily actions. Now, what I will do for you is I'm going to just mention here with sexual misconduct that you're going to study this tomorrow in the 5 precepts, and you're going to see that the Buddha teaches about not having sex with minors, that he suggests that you don't have sex outside of existing relationships, that you don't have sex against someone's consent, like you're raping somebody and stuff like this. He's going to go into a lot of details about sexual misconduct, but it's important to note that he doesn't talk about same-gender relationships because same-gender relationships aren't causing harm. He was aware of same-gender relationships during his life because he talks about it during his teachings. If you understand the universal truth of impermanence, then you understand that it's impossible for every man to be interested in having sex with a woman, and it's impossible for every woman to be interested in having sex with a man. If so, that would be permanence. But we understand the universal truth of impermanence. Ever since the beginning of time, people have been having sex with the opposite gender and same gender too. There's never been a time where everybody had sex with the opposite gender, because that would be permanence, right? So if you're someone who prefers same gender relationships, or you know someone who does, this is completely normal. It's two loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex with each other, and they're not causing harm to anyone, right? So you're going to see more details on this in the 5 precepts when we talk about those. But I like to just give you a heads up here, because when people see this sexual misconduct, sometimes they're curious, like, what does that mean? Well, you're going to get details on that tomorrow. But just as a heads up, it doesn't include same gender relationships, because there's no harm and it's completely normal. Okay, so now we move into, and there's other things that the Buddha teaches too, which is like eliminating substances that cause heedlessness, gambling, and all these kinds of things, right? So there's a whole bunch of things that could potentially be harmful. You're going to need to apply this to your day-to-day life and make sure that you're not causing harm through your bodily actions. And you can see more in the book about this particular step. So now we move into right livelihood. What a livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life. If you choose to sustain your life off of causing harm to someone, then that harm is going to come back to you. So here's the words of the Buddha in the Eightfold Path. He says, "In what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood." So here he's just talking very general, very broad, because in other parts of his teachings, he explains right livelihood. He has 2 levels of purification that he shows you how to be able to get to this point where you're performing a livelihood that isn't causing harm to others, and you thoroughly enjoy what you're doing in your livelihood. So here's some of that guidance. Here he's talking about 5 livelihoods that would cause harm if you did these: business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. If you have any businesses in these types of things, it's causing harm, and this harm is going to come back to you. But remember, you're not interested in believing any of this stuff. You would like to independently verify it. So you can take these and you can look at examples in the world, and you can see that when people are doing these types of livelihoods, harm comes to them. Or maybe you've done some of these things and you can see that harm comes to you. So let me just take one of these and show you how to do it. So business and substances that cause heedlessness, right? If I stood on the street corner and I was selling crystal methamphetamine or heroin into the community, I'm causing harm in the community. These people are getting addicted to this substance. They're going out to rob and steal in order to bring me money. Right? So I'm causing harm because all these people are getting addicted to this substance and their mind is heedless. Well, now standing on the street corner selling heroin and crystal methamphetamine, I'm very likely to get beat up. I can get robbed. I can get murdered. I can get arrested. I can get addicted to my own substances. This is the unwholesome karma of my decisions, that I've made this decision and now these things are coming back to me. Right? So you need to be able to look at these things. And when you look at these things, it's important to understand that we're not talking about human laws. The laws of a government is not the natural law of karma, because those laws are created in a way by human beings that are oftentimes unfair or maybe even not being executed and enforced equally amongst all people. Because human beings are creating laws, and human beings are prone to error. So when we create laws and we enforce laws, there's going to be errors, right? But this natural law of karma doesn't have any errors. So for example, a government could say to me, "Hey, you would like to work at that liquor store over there? You'd like to be a cashier? Go for it," right? We're not going to arrest you. We're not going to do anything. Go do it, right? If that's what you would like to do, you go do it, right? But if you understand the natural law of karma, you might realize that that's really unwise, because now if I work in that liquor store, oftentimes people get robbed, they get beat up, they get murdered in a liquor store. And at the very least, you're going to deal with intoxicated clientele from time to time, and you're going to have to deal with this. So now on a day-to-day basis, how can you get to peace and joy in your day-to-day life when you have to deal with these intoxicated people time in and time out? So this natural law of karma is functioning at a much higher level than the laws that the government's creating. So if you develop an understanding of the natural law of karma and you're practicing that, you'll never have to worry about your government laws, because you're going to be practicing a much higher law than that. Right? So you could actually independently verify each one of these if you like. And if you have questions on them, just let me know. Okay? So then the Buddha teaches you how to perform your livelihood. This is part of the purification of your livelihood, because it's not just about what livelihood you pick, it's about how you perform it and making sure that you're developing a really wonderful career for yourself. That's where you're going to experience peace and joy in your life, by having a really healthy career. So here he talks about scheming, flattery, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. What scheming is like corruption. So say I was a politician. It's not one of those five. It's not business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, or poisons. So I could be a politician. But now if I'm corrupt and I'm doing things that are scheming, maybe 10 or 15 years into my career, people find out about this, and now I'm not able to get reelected. So I can't sustain my life. I can't buy the basic necessities that I need, because my career is basically wasted because I was scheming and I was corrupt, right? So this is not going to be helpful in your career. And then flattery. What this is like insincere comments just to try to get people to do things the way you want them to do it. So say if I was a salesperson and a customer comes in and I'm like, oh, wow, that shirt is so beautiful on you. It really brings out the colors of your eyes. You know what you really need to go with that is you need this pair of earrings over here. This is going to look so great with that shirt. Right? This is maybe just insincere comments in order to get this person to buy things. And if you've ever been in that situation, you probably felt uncomfortable there. You're like, I don't even want to buy anything from here. I don't even want to go into the store. I'm going to leave. Right? So if you're just flattering people, it's not going to go well for you. Whether it's your business partners, your customers, your coworkers, you're not interested in just giving insincere comments in order to get people to do things your way. Then there's hinting. What this is like being unclear or imprecise about the way that you communicate. In your work, you would like to be very clear and very precise. So say we are like all on a project team and we need to go in and brief the boss on this project. We'd like to be clear and concise, purposeful, and speak in a way that's beneficial. And this is actually going to help us in our career, that we're not just hinting around, that we're very clear and precise in the work that we do. Then belittling. This is like degrading and diminishing people. This is like talking down to people. Maybe your coworkers, maybe your business partners, maybe your competition. Maybe you're degrading and diminishing them. And if you did that, it's not going to go well for you. So even if you have a customer there and they're like, hey, what about that person over there? Don't they sell stuff similar to you? Well, if you degrade and diminish them, it's not going to look good for you, and people aren't going to be interested in doing business with you. So it's better to just not say anything at all and say, you know what, I'm not sure what they sell over there, but if you'd like to go check it out, you're more than welcome. But what I can do for you is I can do this. Here's what I sell, or here's what I can offer you as a service, right? So you focus on what you do instead of degrading or diminishing what other people do. So if you're belittling your business partners, your coworkers, your competition, it's not going to go well for you in your career. So you'd like to get rid of that, right? And then there's pursuing gain with gain. What this is like you're just taking a job for the money. You don't really care about the product or the service. You don't really have ambition or enthusiasm or motivation in the work that you're doing. You're just doing it for the money. That's all you care about. And if you've ever had that kind of job, you probably enjoyed it at the beginning because you're getting all this money, but then it probably wore out. And you got to the point where you despised this job and you kind of dragged yourself to work every day, that you didn't really have enthusiasm and motivation and ambition in this work. And that's what the Buddha is guiding you to ultimately be able to do, is get to the point where you have enthusiasm and ambition and motivation in the work that you do. Because if you go somewhere 8 hours a day and you hate being there, you're not going to be peaceful and joyful. Right? You need to get to a livelihood where the work that you do is just thoroughly enjoyable, to the point where you'd even do this work at no cost. If, someone was able to do this work and you didn't get paid for it, you'd still be willing to do it. Of course, you need to get money. You need to support yourself and have an income, but you would like to get to the point where you enjoy this work so thoroughly that even if you didn't get paid, you would still do the work, right? This is what the Buddha is guiding you to be able to do. And this is the first fold of purification, making sure you're not doing one of those 5 livelihoods, and also that you're not doing scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, or pursuing gain with gain. This is called the first fold of purification. There's additional teachings beyond this to get to the second fold of purification, where you can thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing. So if you, say, are in a job that you don't particularly care for, or maybe you're unemployed right now and you're looking for a new job, or you're planning to move to a new job, I would suggest that you read volume 12, chapter 14. That's where you're going to see all the teachings from the Buddha about your livelihood. So if you look at volume 12, chapter 14, in the books are over there on the shelf, or you can download them from the internet, that they're free there. That's where the Buddha teaches you about this second fold of purification. And you'll see words from me there to help you as well. And this will help you move to a livelihood that you thoroughly enjoy and that you have ambition and motivation behind. Because that's what you would ultimately like to get to. This word work, it's a 4-letter word. We kind of like sometimes drag ourselves to work, right? But that's not what you're interested in. You're looking to have enthusiasm and ambition and motivation in the work that you do, so you can thoroughly enjoy whatever it is that you do day to day. Sometimes when I'm on my way here on the motorbike, it's like pouring down raining, and I'm on my way here pouring down raining to teach the teachings of the Buddha. And I'm smiling. It's like, wow, it's going to be great to get to the temple and share those teachings with people, because I know these are the teachings that lead to this enlightened mental state. So I'm not disgruntled or angry. I'm not thinking about turning around or anything like that. I'm not frustrated. I'm just like, wow, okay, let's go. I guess this body is going to get wet. Right? And it's just going to get wet, and that's impermanent. And when I get to the temple, I'll dry off. Right? So you need to get to the point where no matter what's going on, you just thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing, and then make wise choices about the type of work that you do. Okay? So this is right livelihood. So now, just to summarize the moral conduct section, we talked about right speech, right action, and right livelihood. What right speech is where all your verbal conduct is harmless. And that includes not only the speech, but remember, I talked about this as right communication. You would like to look at your chat, your social media posts, your emails, all this kind of stuff. You would like to be communicating in a way that's harmless, using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. And then improving your actions and the way that you interact in the world, that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions. So even like if you were in an argument with somebody and you slam the door, this is a bodily action that you would like to not do, right? That is going to cause harm, and it's going to make it difficult for you to have harmonious relationships. So you like to pay attention to your bodily actions. And then there's right livelihood, ensuring that you're sustaining your life without causing harm to others, and ultimately getting to a point where you have enthusiasm and ambition and motivation behind your job. And everything you do in that livelihood is something you thoroughly enjoy. Okay, so this is the moral conduct section. Any questions here on this? Yes, sir.
There we go. Just wanted to clarify on living beings in terms of harmful livelihood. Is that referring to things like, I don't know, human trafficking, prostitution, or is it literally talking about all living beings in terms of even if you were trading animals, if you owned a pet shop? Just wanted some clarification on the living beings part.
Yeah, all of those things you just mentioned fall under that category. And the way that you know that a being is a living being, you'll hear me talk about this tomorrow with the 5 precepts, is the Buddha gives you a teaching called the 5 aggregates so that you can understand what a living being is. This is like the 5 criteria or the 5 elements that make a living being a living being. They're going to have physical form. They're going to have feelings. They're going to have perceptions, which are views and opinions about the world. They're going to have what's called volitional formations or choices and decisions, and they're going to have a consciousness or a mind. So anytime you're dealing in living beings, and that's the ultimate product, then you're going to be causing harm. So using some of your examples, like if I was a dog breeder, I'm sustaining my life off of the womb of this dog. And now this dog is having dogs after dog, puppy after puppy after puppy, in order to sustain my life. And now I'm putting that animal in a position of like being a slave, right? So there's these kinds of things and others, prostitution, human trafficking, even like MMA fighting and things like this. You know, that's why those people get injured. And some of them even die very early in life because of the unwholesome karma of causing harm in this situation. They've sustained their life off of causing harm to somebody else as a living being. So you can look at this and be able to understand through the 5 aggregates what a living being is, and then realize that you're not interested in sustaining your life in that way, that you would like to find some other more wholesome way to sustain your life.
Very good. The other thing I also wanted to ask is with like pursuing gain with gain, technically, even if you were like innocently like investing in something for profitability over time, or maybe one that invests in the stock market, does that all fall under the category of pursuing gain for gain?
Not necessarily. Sometimes people understand this one incorrectly. They think that it means like if you take some money and you invest it in order to make more money, that's pursuing gain with gain. But what the Buddha is talking about here is that all you care about is the gain. All you care about is the profit. So if someone's like a financial advisor, they might thoroughly enjoy that work, like helping people to advise them on investments. And they're doing it because they just thoroughly enjoy it. They have a lot of ambition and motivation behind that work, and they do it very ethically, right? And this could be a wholesome livelihood. But if you are only doing this in order to make money, and that's all you were interested in, like, for example, say like someone's a day trader and they're just obsessively trying to figure out and like buying and selling stocks, and they don't really care about the work. It's just kind of like gambling almost. In this situation, their mind is going to get addicted to that, and they're going to have craving that they're really not interested in providing any benefit to the world. It's just, I want this money, I want this money, I want this money. And that's all that the mind cares about. And now this person is going to find it very difficult to exist in the world and have a wholesome livelihood that they feel good and enthusiasm about, because it's more like gambling to them instead. So a financial advisor could be pursuing gain with gain, but they may not be too. It's not the actual livelihood itself. It's how the mind is pursuing it and how the mind's thinking about it. Even me, like when I first started my career, I was in IT field, and I can tell you the main reason why I was there is I was trying to make money. That was it. You know, I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed helping the people, like my employees. I had employees working for me, and I enjoyed helping them get education and things like this. But the primary reason why I was doing it was to make money. And that's why eventually, once I got a lot of money, I was like, all right, I'm not interested in doing this anymore. And I went and did something else, right? And that's where eventually you'll find your way to a wholesome livelihood that you feel really good about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for clarifying.
You're welcome. Drew, you have a question?
Hello. Oh, cool. I actually have 2 questions, because moral conduct has been my focus area for the last 12 months. But given we're talking about livelihood and gain for gain, I'll start there. And it also feeds back to my question about apathy from earlier on. So if you're in a role, especially a corporate role, where you feel quite a bit of apathy about the role and you are there for the money, how do you distinguish between it being wrong livelihood for you versus it actually being an embedded craving, desire, attachment, maybe for a role of higher status because it would be beneficial to your ego? And hence, it's got nothing to do with the role, and it's a mistake to change roles, and it wouldn't actually fix anything. So how can you distinguish between the two?
Yeah, so this is why a wrong livelihood is actually not going to promote beneficial results, because you could be in a livelihood that isn't one of those 5, right? And maybe you're not even doing any of these things, right? But it could still be a wrong livelihood, so to speak. And that's what the second fold of purification is, that the Buddha teaches you how to like eliminate ego out of your job, is making sure that you don't have any of those pollutions of the 10 fetters involved in your livelihood and what it is that you're choosing to do. So what I'm going to teach you next with the mental discipline is what's going to help you to be able to observe your mind and determine whether ego is in there, for example. Because like I could maybe, when I first, maybe like I'm 20, 25 years old and I really want to be a police officer and I really like throwing people up against the car and handcuffing them and all these kinds of stuff. And I really want this power because I'm 20, 25 years old, right? And this helps my ego. I feel like, yeah, look at me, I'm the man, right? But now as I start learning and practicing these teachings and I start training my mind, maybe that ego starts to get out of there. And now I'm like, what I really enjoy is I really just enjoy helping people. Let me go be a social worker or a therapist or something like this. And this is where people will make career changes, right? So it doesn't mean that every police officer has ego, right? Because there's definitely police officers that is their right livelihood and they do that really well. But there's some that maybe have a lot of ego, and that's the main reason why they're doing that particular livelihood. So you need to use what's called mindfulness or awareness of mind, which I'm going to teach you next, to be able to observe the qualities of your mind and know what is it that's motivating you for this livelihood. And by the time you get to a true right livelihood where it's fully purified, all those pollutions will be out of your mind and you will select a livelihood that you thoroughly enjoy and you don't have ego or those other things in there. But you need to know what mindfulness is to be able to see that and identify it and get rid of it out of the mind.
I think I also need to have a look at, was it volume 12?
Volume 12, chapter 14.
Yeah.
That's the best place to look because that's where the Buddha shares all the teachings on right livelihood. And then I have some words in there to help you understand it too. Even though the Buddha speaks very clear and very precise and very concise, it helps to have a dedicated teacher and practitioner who's done the work and you can see how to implement it in your day-to-day life. Your battery keeps running out. That's that impermanence.
The other question I had from the moral conduct section of the Eightfold Path, when you're starting out, especially with right action, how do you guard against actually developing a craving to have right action? So, for example, you follow the 5 precepts and you feel pride, but there's some area of your conduct you actually need to change to align with the 5 precepts, which takes willpower, which is impermanent.
Right.
So you have situations where you lapse and you undertake wrong action, and therefore you feel shame and disgust. So, I can see how that's a beneficial craving to help you along the path, but you've just developed a new craving. So how do you guard against that? And if it's happened already, how can you eliminate it?
Sure. So there's no such thing as a beneficial craving. All craving is going to lead to unwholesome results. So what you would like to do, this falls under the area that the Buddha teaches called moral wrongdoing and moral concern. What moral wrongdoing is where you understand what's wise and unwise. And this is what you cultivate as part of the natural laws. You understand these wise things lead to wholesome results and these unwise things lead to unwholesome results. That's the moral wrongdoing that you need to develop and understand. Then there's what's called moral concern, where you're concerned about your own moral conduct and you're disinterested in causing harm to others. And now you're concerned about that. You're not worried. You don't have anxiety, but you have concern. So now that when you do see you make a mistake, because you're going to make mistakes between here and enlightenment, and you have those missteps, you look at it and you reflect on it and you say, what could I have done better here? What could I have done to improve this and make it better for next time? Okay, I made a mistake now. Can't go back and change that, but I can make it better for the future. So what the Buddha teaches you, in addition to moral wrongdoing and moral concern, is he says that whenever you're about to do something with your moral conduct, you should reflect on that and ask yourself, does this cause harm to others? Does it cause harm to me, or does it cause harm to both? And if it does, he says, don't do that thing. If you're doing something and in the process of doing something, you should be reflecting, is this causing harm to others, to me, or both? And if it is, he says you should stop doing that thing immediately. And then after you've done something, he says that you should reflect on that. Has it caused harm to others, me, or both? And if it has, then don't ever do that thing again, right? And this is how you cultivate your wisdom. And more, when you cultivate this wisdom in your mind, you'll just naturally practice it because you're disinterested because of right intention to cause harm to other beings. So you need to be able to gradually cultivate your wisdom this way. And if you notice that there's a craving to have perfection in your practice, this is like sometimes people crave enlightenment, right? Like once you hear about this peaceful and joyful mental state, that's just the next craving that someone has that they chase after, right? So if you chased after enlightenment or being perfect with your actions, you're not going to be able to get it because there's still craving there. But also if you're over here and you could care less about what you did and how you interacted in the world, you're not going to get to peace and joy there either. So there's this middle way where you gradually work towards goals and objectives and interest. You realize that you're a work in progress and you're not going to be perfect right now. The goal isn't to be perfect today. The goal is that whatever you do today, look at it, gain wisdom from it so that later you can continue to evolve and develop and refine. And now over time, you're becoming a better and better human being. You're essentially evolving into a better and better human being. It's kind of like a lizard evolves as a species. We can evolve as a species too. As human beings, we can evolve to the point where none of us experience anger and sadness and frustration. But it takes time for us to build this wisdom into our community and get to the point where more and more people understand it, right? Because you can see here in Thailand, it's a pretty peaceful place, right? You don't really see people getting angry and frustrated and agitated and annoyed because the teachings have been here for 800 to 1200 years. It's deeply soaked into the culture. So this wisdom is well understood in Thailand. So you don't see a lot of strong emotions around Thailand for the most part. Of course, there's some people that are functioning that way and they just don't understand the teachings. But by and large, you're going to see a lot of peacefulness and a lot of joy from the Thai people. So when you're making mistakes, just use it as an opportunity to cultivate wisdom and get better, and understand that chasing after perfection is not wise because it's just another craving, and you would like to just gradually work towards things as a goal, objective, or interest. Okay, let me see if we have anything anywhere else. We have another question? Or are you guys just putting the mic down? Okay. All right. So now let's move on to the next part. Now we're going to move into mental discipline. Without the mental discipline, you wouldn't be able to actually practice the moral conduct. You need the mental discipline in order to bring the moral conduct into practice. But you also need the wisdom too. If you didn't have the wisdom section, you wouldn't be able to practice the moral conduct or the mental discipline. So all these factors are working together. You're not mastering one before you move on to the other. You're actually working with all of them at the same time. So now I'm going to teach you the mental discipline section, same way I've done before, which is using the original words of the Buddha. I'm going to read this to you, and then I'm going to break it down and help you to understand how to actually practice it. So here's the words of the Buddha on right effort. In what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort. So there's 4 things that he's talking about here. That is right effort. And you're going to need to apply the effort to do these things. They're not going to just happen magically. You have to apply the effort to accomplish these things. So the first one is prevent unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind. What he's talking about here is preventing anything unwholesome that is not currently in the mind. Prevent that from ever coming into the mind. And I've got some examples here to help you. So an example might be, right now, you have no interest in killing another human being. That's like the farthest thing from your mind. It's outside your mind. It's not in your mind. And what the Buddha is saying is apply the effort to prevent these kinds of things from ever coming into your mind. Because this is an unwholesome aspect of life, and you know that if that came into your mind, that it would be unwise. So he's saying prevent that unwholesome thing from ever coming into your mind. And there's other things too. It's not just killing a human being, but there's other things that are not currently in your mind that are unwholesome, that you're going to need to apply the effort to prevent them from ever coming into your mind. The second one, he says, abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. So there's certain unwholesome mental states that are currently in your mind, and you're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate those out of your mind. And some examples that I came up with is, say that you're in an existing relationship and you have a craving for sex outside of your existing relationship. Well, you know that's going to lead to harm, so you like to cut that off and let it go. You'd like to eliminate that out of your mind. Okay, so there's some others like anger, frustration, or irritation, right? So maybe you have some anger, frustration, or irritation that arises up in your mind. And if you notice that there's some anger, frustration, irritation, this is an unwholesome quality in your mind, you're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that out of your mind. That's what right effort is for the second part. Okay, so now we've got the third part. Produce unarisen, wholesome mental states to arise. So there's certain wholesome mental states that are not currently in your mind. And you're going to learn about these wholesome mental states. And as you do, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring those into your mind. So for example, generosity. You're going to learn that generosity trains your mind to let go. If you're selfish and you're holding on to things very tightly and you're not willing to share, you're not going to be able to experience enlightenment. You're going to need to give and share without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources. And we'll talk about this and more about what generosity is, right? But if you know that you're not a very generous person, you're going to have to apply the effort to bring this into your mind because that quality doesn't currently exist in the mind. Or compassion. What compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. And what this does is this helps to antidote indifference. So let's just say you're an indifferent person. You see somebody suffering or having difficulties in life, and you're like, I don't care. That's them. It's not me. I don't care. I don't know them, right? That's not my family. That's not my friends. It doesn't matter to me. That's their karma. Who cares, right? So if that's where your mind is, that's the opposite of compassion. And what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to bring in the compassion. You're going to need to apply the effort to bring that into the mind so you can have this concern for the misfortune of others. Not worry, not anxiety, but concern for their misfortune. It doesn't mean that you necessarily do anything. This is a mental state that you cultivate in the mind where you have concern for their misfortune. And you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this into the mind if you don't have it. Right? And then there's maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away, and work to increase their growth in the mind. So there's certain wholesome mental states that are currently in your mind, but they haven't been brought to full growth and full perfection. So loving kindness is a good example of this. Say that you have loving kindness, which is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. You probably have that to a certain degree in your mind, but it hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and development because in some situations, you get angry, you get bitter, you get harsh and hostile towards other people. That's the opposite of loving kindness. And that's because your loving kindness hasn't been brought to full growth, perfection of development. So you're going to need to apply the effort to allow this wholesome quality to be cultivated in the mind and permeating in the mind more readily and more fully. Then there's something called sympathetic joy. What sympathetic joy is joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. This is essentially the opposite of jealousy or envy. So you might actually have sympathetic joy in your mind. Someone says, hey, I'm taking a trip to Thailand. You're like, oh, that's wonderful. I was there last year. Have a great time. You're going to have a wonderful time, right? That's your sympathetic joy. You're joyful for their success, even though you didn't contribute to it, right? But in other situations, maybe you're at work and someone applies for a job and you apply for a job too. You're trying to get a promotion at work and maybe they get the job instead of you, and you're angry and you're jealous and you're frustrated, right? Maybe you're envious of them having gotten the job. And in this situation, your sympathetic joy hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. And you're going to need to apply the effort to do that. Because as long as you allow the mind to be jealous and envious, it's not enlightened, because there's a craving in there. You wanted that job and you didn't get it. And now this other person got it. So now you're jealous or envious of them, right? So you're going to need to apply the effort to fully support and maintain these wholesome qualities in the mind. That's what the fourth one is. So there's 4 things here with right effort. You're preventing unwholesome qualities from coming into the mind. You're eliminating unwholesome qualities that are currently in the mind. You're bringing in wholesome qualities that are not currently in the mind. And you're supporting and encouraging the wholesome qualities that are currently in your mind. Right? And this is right effort, applying the effort to do this. Okay. So now these examples, by the way, are just ones that I came up with. These are going to be unique to you. This is where you're going to need to figure this out. And the way you figure out what are your wholesome qualities and unwholesome qualities is through this next step. This next step is right mindfulness. You wouldn't be able to practice right effort without right mindfulness. So here I'm going to read this and then I'll teach it to you. The Buddha says, in what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides, reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness. Okay, so he's talking about 4 things here. And I'll explain to you what he's talking about. But first, let's just talk about mindfulness in general. The way you might think about mindfulness right now is awareness of mind. This is oftentimes where people first get started. You can just think about it as awareness of mind, that you'd like to be aware of your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings, your emotions, things like this. You'd like to be aware of these things, right? And you're developing this throughout your journey to enlightenment. The next step is going to help you to develop this, where you have this awareness of the mind. Now, some people use this word mindfulness today in a way that the Buddha didn't use it, because this word has made its way into common language, where someone might say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table? What they're really saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the table? And they're just replacing the word careful with mindful. Right? And that's not the way that the Buddha used this word. So if other people use it that way, that's fine. That's on them. But you would like to get more and more in touch with what this word means so that you can practice it in the way that the Buddha taught it. And that's what's going to lead to your enlightenment. So mindfulness generally means awareness of mind. Because in the unenlightened state, we tend to not have that. We tend to just walk through the world, plow through the world, could care less about what other people are experiencing in terms of our conduct. Our mind isn't really thinking about and reflecting and being introspective. We just plowing through the world, knocking down trees, burning up the forest, having all kinds of difficulties. And we blame it on everyone else, right? So this mindfulness is awareness of mind. And that might be the way that you practice it for a few months. It's just generally developing some awareness of mind. But more and more, you would like to get to the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is what the Buddha is talking about here, where you develop awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. The bodily sensations that he's talking about, this is like the early warning system that you have that's alerting you that you're about to become angry or frustrated or agitated. It's not just like an itch or a physical pain or something like that. That's not what we're talking about. Think about a time when you've been angry or frustrated. You may or may not even be aware of this right now, that there was tingling in the body, there was tightening in the chest, there was tightening in the throat, there was heat in the face, there was pressure in the skull. That was the bodily sensations that the Buddha is talking about. This is an early warning system that you have built into this being that you are, that is alerting you that you're about to become angry. You're about to become frustrated. Even those pleasant feelings, those conditional pleasant feelings, they have bodily sensations too. It's like tingling across the shoulders, up the back of the neck, over the skull. These are the bodily sensations. This is an early warning system alerting you that your mind is about to get a conditioned feeling. Essentially, you're experiencing this. The mind's like, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling here. And if you do nothing about it, your mind's going to get the conditioned feeling. That's the next part. That now you're experiencing a feeling. The mind is now angry, or now shy, or now frustrated, or now experiencing embarrassment or disappointment or something else, right? So what the Buddha teaches you is that at these bodily sensations, when you have awareness of these bodily sensations, to apply right effort and cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation. You're not suppressing your feelings. You're actually cutting it off before it's become a feeling. So when the mind's like, hey, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling, you're like, nope, not going to let you do that, right? Nope, not going to let you do that. You rewire the mind. So the mind is alerting you that it's about to get a conditioned feeling. And you say, nope, not going to let you do that. And then more and more as you do that, your mind will get rewired to the point where it will no longer experience any conditioned feelings because you didn't allow it to have that conditioned feeling. But between now and enlightenment, you're going to get some conditioned feelings. You're not going to be able to just implement what I'm explaining right away, right? The way that this might look in like a real life example is, say you're sitting there watching the news and you're noticing some bodily sensations associated with frustration and agitation starting to arise. Instead of just sitting there and letting the mind dwell and actually forming a conditioned feeling, when you're noticing the bodily sensations, you need to redirect the mind. Get up and go for a walk. Right? Turn off the TV, go for a walk, go ride a bicycle, go get a drink of water from the kitchen or something like that, right? Redirect the mind somewhere else. If you allow the mind to sit there and just watch the news and continue to take in the news, it's going to blow past the bodily sensations and now it's going to become a feeling. Okay, now your mind's angry, right? And you didn't catch it soon enough. Well, you can cut it off there too. Right? Cut it off as a feeling. It's a lot harder to cut it off as a feeling, but you can, right? What you would like to do ideally is prevent it from ever coming into the mind. That's cutting it off at the bodily sensations. So if you're going to take a boat from, say, Australia to Indonesia, and you're out in the middle of the water, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water comes into the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with. And if you'd like to sail your way from Australia to Indonesia, you've got to prevent this water from ever coming into the boat, right? So it's the same thing that in your day-to-day life, you would like to prevent these feelings, these conditional feelings from coming into the mind. So the bodily sensations are there to help you spot it. And where you spot it, you cut it off and let it go, right? Where you miss it and it does become a feeling, work on cutting it off and letting it go there too. You can accomplish that too. It's just a lot harder, right? And now when it's a feeling, if you don't cut it off and let it go there, it's going to affect the condition of your mind. Have you ever been angry or irritated for like a couple of hours or like a day or two? Maybe even a week or so. You've been agitated or annoyed? Of course you were, right? All of us have been at some point. That's because you didn't understand the 4 foundations of mindfulness. You didn't have the wisdom of it. So you experienced some contact there was a craving in your mind, there was these bodily sensations, and you didn't know to cut it off, and it became a feeling, and now you dwelled in that feeling, and now for the next few hours, the next few days, the next week or two, you were generally grumpy and agitated and annoyed. This is the life cycle, and you can independently verify what I'm teaching you, right? This is the truth because you've experienced it. And now, when you allow your mind to maintain that condition of grumpiness and irritability, it forms what's called a mental object. A mental object is a deeply rooted container in your mind that is essentially filling up. In this example, it's ill will. We're not born with ill will, right? When we went into the nursery at the hospital, we didn't hate other babies. We weren't angry at other people, right? We went into the nursery, we were like, goo, goo, gago, goo, 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 gago, right? But over time, because of our cravings, desires, attachments, we formed these mental objects. Those 10 fetters are all mental objects. One of them is ill will. So when we were growing up, we wanted chocolate and ice cream, perhaps. And we were like, mommy, daddy, can you give me chocolate and ice cream? I want some chocolate and ice cream. And they were like, sure, here you go. Here, have some chocolate and ice cream. And we're like, you're the best mommy and daddy ever. This is the greatest day ever. Thank you so much for that chocolate and ice cream. I feel so good. And they kept giving us chocolate and ice cream. But eventually we said, mommy, daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? And they said, no. And we said, you're the worst mommy and daddy ever, right? Because as long as we were getting our craving fulfilled, we were happy. But when we didn't get what we wanted, we were angry. We were frustrated. And it was a bodily sensation. It became a feeling. It affected the condition of our mind, where for several minutes or hours we were upset and frustrated. And then we formed this mental object of ill will. And right now, there's a certain amount of ill will that's in the mind, in the unenlightened state. Right now, it hasn't arisen. Right now, you're just listening to me talk. You're not angry. You're not frustrated, right? But if somebody triggers one of your cravings, if there's some kind of contact that comes into your mind and your craving gets triggered, your ill will is going to arise because you have this mental object of ill will in the mind. So you need to be having awareness of these mental objects where you learn about these 10 fetters and you understand the symptoms that they produce so that you can spot it when it comes up. And ill will is just one of them. There's others as well. So the ideal would be to blockade this at the bodily sensations. Keep cutting it off and cutting it off and cutting it off and cutting it off and not allowing the mind to form conditioned feelings. All the while cleaning up your mental objects and purifying the mind and getting rid of these fetters. And that's what the Buddha is guiding you to do. And it's going to be a gradual process of being able to do that. So even though this is the ideal, all the while you understand your mind is going to get some conditioned feelings. Eventually, if you clean up the mind enough, you won't have any arising of any discontentedness whatsoever. It doesn't matter what's happening. There is no arising of discontentedness. But in the meantime, as you're transitioning your mind, you're going to need to have mindfulness where you're cutting off and letting go at the bodily sensations and not allowing the mind to form that conditioned feeling. Because as long as you allow the mind to have the conditioned pleasant feelings, the painful ones are waiting right around the corner. Because this pleasant feeling that you're feeling and the mind's wired like that, as soon as the condition changes, now you're going to have the conditioned painful feeling over here, right? So you like to put a blockade at the bodily sensations, realizing it's going to take you time to build this up. So that's why you might start with just developing some awareness of mind. That's what you would like to start with. But then more and more, develop these 4 foundations of mindfulness. Okay? So this is right mindfulness. And what's going to help you to understand this and practice this is right concentration. This is the 8th step. Without right concentration, you wouldn't be able to develop right mindfulness. And without right mindfulness, you wouldn't be able to apply right effort. So here, the Buddha is actually describing what's referred to as the jhanas. The jhanas are a preliminary phase that the mind goes through that are enhanced qualities of mind. This here, he's describing the results of having practiced the entire Eightfold Path. And if you practice the Eightfold Path, you'll experience these heightened qualities of awareness in the mind. That the mind, for example, in the unenlightened state, you have a conscious mind and you have a subconscious mind. And by the time you get to the second jhana, you now have what's called unification of the mind or oneness of mind. There's no longer a conscious and a subconscious mind. Your conscious mind is polluted but your subconscious mind is even more polluted. If you've ever been around talking to friends before and you just blurted something out and you were like, why did I say that? That was so silly of me. Like, I don't think that way. Where did that come from? That was coming from your subconscious mind throwing something up into your conscious mind and you just blurted it out, right? So if you're going to purify your entire mind, you're going to need to have awareness of the entire mind. So when you have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, you can't actually purify your entire mind. So by the time you get to the second jhana, these preliminary phases that the Buddha is talking about, then you will have unification of the mind or oneness of mind, where now you can see and observe the entire mind. So these are heightened qualities that you experience on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. So I'm not going to read this to you. I have a course coming up in 2 weeks where we're going to go into this in detail. It's called Experiencing the Jhanas and the 4 Stages of Enlightenment. We're going to go into this in detail. But in this class, because it's a foundational class, I focus you on how to practice right concentration. What the Buddha is teaching you there is the results of having developed the Eightfold Path fully is that you will experience the jhanas. It's like the light bulb flickering and showing you that you're putting together the Eightfold Path really well. But in terms of how to practice right concentration, he shares it in other parts of his teachings. He talks about developing a meditation practice and practicing singleness of mind. That's why I started you guys off with the meditation practice. And that's why we're going to be teaching it this afternoon so that you can understand what breathing mindfulness meditation is in detail. I'm going to be going into it in detail to help you understand it more fully. So you're going to need to develop a meditation practice of breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. These are the first 2 meditations that you learn. There's 2 other meditations that you may or may not need. They're specialized meditations that only certain people might need them and certain people might not. But loving kindness and breathing mindfulness, you're going to need those. And that's why I focus you on those in order to develop those. And then these others, I teach them when people need them. And I teach them in different courses and classes as well. So you're going to need to develop a breathing mindfulness meditation practice where you're meditating 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. And this could sound like a lot for you right now, depending on where you are in your life. And that might be because you have certain unbeneficial things in your life that you're going to need to clear out. If you're spending 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day on social media and YouTube, you can probably clear some of that out. Bring it down to 30 minutes or an hour, and then you'll have plenty of time to do things like meditation, right? So you're going to need to clear a couple of things out. So it can oftentimes take 6 months, a year, even 2 years to develop a meditation practice like this, where you're meditating 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. By the time you get to the end of this course, we'll be meditating 30 minutes or more. But in terms of implementing this in your day-to-day life, it might take longer, right? So this is the first part, is developing your meditation practice. And inside that meditation, you're developing your mindfulness, awareness of mind, and you're developing your concentration. We'll talk about it this afternoon. Then you'd also like to practice what's called singleness of mind. What singleness of mind is that in day-to-day life, you would like to be practicing focusing on one thing at a time. Maybe what you've been taught is to have multitasking. If you've been taught this, your mind isn't actually multitasking. What multitasking is thought to do is you're kind of doing multiple things at one time, and people think you're more productive if you do this. But in reality, what's happening is your mind is rapidly cycling from thing to 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 thing. And then when you get home, you might find that it's hard to relax, that you feel stress and you feel anxiety, right? It's kind of like a racehorse. If a racehorse is running around a track all day, and then when it goes to the barn, it can't calm down. It's like really hyped up, right? So it's the same thing with your mind. If you bounce around from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing all day, you're going to find that you lack concentration. So when you're talking on your phone and you're watching TV and you're eating a sandwich, you're not actually doing all 3 of those things at one time. You're talking on the phone for a few seconds, you're watching TV for a few seconds, and you're eating your sandwich for a few seconds. And your mind's now cycling through this. And when you get off the phone, you might not even remember what you talked about because your mind wasn't focused and concentrated. You might have even said things that were unwise, or you might have agreed to something that you now have to follow back up with that person and be like, by the way, Mom, I know I agreed to do something for you. What was it? Can you remind me? Right? So you think you might be more productive in this situation, but in reality, you're having to go clean up your mess. Because if you would have just had the conversation, instead of 45 minutes or an hour, it would have only been 15 or 20 minutes. And you could have handled the conversation, got off the phone, been concentrated, handle your work, and be done. Right? And then when you would like to eat, you just eat and you focus on eating. Right? So if you allow your mind to constantly bounce around like this, you're not going to be able to hone it to have concentration and focus. So wherever you see your mind wandering, you would like to cut that off and bring it back. So say you're in a business meeting and your mind is wandering and thinking about that trip to Thailand that you're going to take in like 3 months, and you're just daydreaming about that trip to Thailand. You got to cut that off and let it go and come back to the meeting and handle whatever it is that you're handling right there. Or right now, maybe you're starting to think about lunch. You're like, what am I going to have for lunch? I saw some really good mango and sticky rice down the street. Maybe I'll go get that. No. Cut that off. Come back to the conversation that we're having, right? So you like to practice singleness of mind in day-to-day life. This is going to hone your mind to be focused and concentrated. It's kind of like this. If you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod and you were grinding that back and forth over and over and over again, initially this steel rod's going to bounce around a lot because you don't have a groove there yet. But if you grind this steel rod back and forth enough, you're going to get a deeper and deeper groove. And if it pops out, you're going to know it. You're going to be able to bring it back very easily. But eventually, if you grind this steel rod back and forth enough, you're going to get a deep enough groove that it won't ever pop out. So that's the way your mind functions. So if you're washing dishes and you see your mind wandering, you cut that off and bring it back and wash dishes, right? Or say you're eating and your mind wants to be watching TV or watching YouTube too. The mind might think like, this is the way to eliminate my boredom. When I just eat by myself, I feel bored. Well, that's because there's a craving. So if you just watch YouTube, it's not going to solve the boredom. But if you get rid of the YouTube and you train your mind to just thoroughly enjoy just sitting there and eating, and that's it, now your mind can be liberated. But if you keep relying on this YouTube, then you're never going to get rid of your craving, desire, attachment. So wherever you see your mind trying to do multiple things, or you see your mind wandering, just cut it off and let it go and bring your mind focused on what it is that you're actually doing. And now more and more, you can just be focused all the time. Your mind can be clear and crisp and concise because you're practicing singleness of mind in all parts of your life. And this is what you'd like to be able to develop more and more. And this is where your mind will be performing more and more optimally. Okay, so this is right concentration, practicing meditation daily and practicing singleness of mind in all parts of your life. You'd like to be practicing. So like when I'm writing an email, I don't have a YouTube video playing in the background. Or say I'm watching a YouTube video and then a message pops in. I'm going to pause the YouTube video. I'm going to go look at the message. I'm going to handle the message. And then I'm going to come back to my YouTube video, right? You're not interested in just having the YouTube video playing in the background while you're pounding out a message, because your mind can't think in that situation and really bring forth all your wisdom for right speech. So practicing singleness of mind is going to promote the best environment for you to bring forth all your wisdom and practice these teachings thoroughly. Okay, so now just to kind of summarize this, is right effort is taking the initiative to eliminate unwholesome qualities and cultivate wholesome qualities. That's what you would like to be doing with right effort, applying right effort to eliminate the unwholesome and cultivate the wholesome. Right mindfulness is having awareness of mind, but more specifically, the 4 foundations of mindfulness: the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. You would like to have awareness of these things. And that's going to take you time to build that. Okay? And then right concentration is practicing meditation daily and practicing singleness of mind. And more, you'll see your mind developing this mindfulness and concentration. So this is the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path. And now all of these factors are working together in order to train the mind and get it to a point where it's very well refined. And it's going to take gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So you're going to need to most likely revisit this more than one time, because you can see it's very comprehensive. This is a complete, perfect plan that's going to move your mind away from the cravings, desires, attachments. It's going to eliminate those and bring it more and more into this peace and this joy of the enlightened mind. So do you guys have any questions about this at all? You have a question? Yeah, go for it.
So I want to ask a question about the sensations and the feelings that afterward.
Yep.
The bad feeling, what we talked about it like before and all, it's easier to understand in a way, and also not just to understand, to want not to have them. Like, it's a motivation. I don't want to be frustrated. I don't want to be angry. With the good feelings, if we'll call it like this, I want to maybe put an example and to see if I understood it, but maybe I didn't follow it. Like, if I'm going to nature, I know by now that if I'll go and I'll see a beautiful place, I will be happy. Feel it inside me and I will be happy. I know that. I don't want, in a way, to cut it. I don't want to arrive to a place and not feel the sensation come from my body. So maybe I didn't understand, like maybe it's not conditional, maybe I didn't understand right. Also, I can give another example.
Let me just do the first one first.
Okay.
Yeah. So in that situation, if you go to nature and you see the trees and the beautiful scenery and you allow your mind to get the conditioned pleasant feelings, then that means when you're in the city and you see nothing but concrete, you feel miserable and frustrated, right? So what you would like to do is you'd like to learn how to go to nature and enjoy it without having a conditioned pleasant feeling. This is what the mind doesn't know how to do in the unenlightened state. It only knows how to have cravings, desires, attachments. And now if I'm in nature, I feel happy. But if I'm in a concrete jungle like a city, then now I feel angry and frustrated and irritated. And that's the problem with these conditioned pleasant feelings. But there's this middle way that the Buddha is inviting you to be able to learn and understand, is how to go to nature and enjoy that and be like, wow, this is so beautiful. This looks really nice. This is great. But all the while, you understand it's impermanent. And you don't form your feelings on it and you don't cling to it. So now after you enjoy the nature, it's like, okay, well, let's go back to the city. Now we go back to the city. Oh, this is nice too. Because now when I need to go buy a product or I need to get a service, there's plenty of people around that can help me and I can enjoy the city too. There's lots of great food. There's lots of great options. Wow, this is wonderful too. So instead of like allowing the mind to get conditioned pleasant feelings in this one situation, that means when that situation isn't there, then the mind's going to feel the painful feelings. So you would like to get to the middle where you can just enjoy all of these situations. You don't cling to them and you understand that they're impermanent. Because as long as you cling to it, when it's impermanent and you experience that impermanence, your mind's going to not be able to maintain its pleasant feelings.
Okay, so when I'm in nature, but I don't do the nope thing. Like when I'm feeling that I'm enjoying it, I don't want to cut it in a way. It's not saying that after that I will be sad. It's just saying that I'm not cutting it right away.
Yeah, the reason why the mind doesn't cut off those conditioned pleasant feelings is because it lacks the wisdom and it lacks the discipline, the mental discipline to realize how unwise it is to allow your mind to get those conditioned pleasant feelings. When you realize how unwise it is to allow yourself to get those conditioned pleasant feelings because it's going to end up in the painful feelings, then more and more you're going to be willing to cut those off. Right now, you don't have the wisdom of that, but you'll need to be able to see it more and more closely, that when you allow your mind to get conditioned pleasant feelings, you're going to get the painful ones. So you'd like to come to this middle way where you can just always be happy and you can always be joyful, but it's not based on any condition. And you can't get to that as long as you allow the mind to have the conditioned pleasant feelings. So you need to look at this more in your day-to-day life. Like, for example, say your mom calls and she says, hey, I heard you got a new flat, a new apartment. I would like to come visit you. This will be wonderful to spend time. We can cook and have fun, and this will be a great time. And maybe she's talking to you on Tuesday, and now you get so excited. Mom's coming. Oh, this is going to be great. Mom's coming. Yay. But now she calls you on Friday. She's like, hey, I'm so sorry. I can't come. Something's come up. And now you get frustrated, you get angry, you get annoyed. You need to be able to see enough of these situations that you realize how unwise it is for you to get so excited. Instead, when mom calls on Tuesday and says, hey, I'm going to come visit you on Tuesday. I would like to see your new apartment. Sweet, mom. Wonderful. That'd be great to see you. Hey, I tell you what, I'm going to cook that special dish that you always enjoy. We'll have a great time together, right? But all the while, you know, this is impermanent. Mom could easily change her plans, and you're not interested in forming any feelings on this. You can be like, hey, this will be great to spend time with you, Mom. I'll see you on Friday. And now when she called you on Friday and she says, hey, I can't come, things have changed. No worries, Mom. We'll do it another time. Right? Instead of being angry and frustrated and agitated and maybe damaging your relationship, you can just be like, hey, Mom, no worries. Thanks for even thinking about coming. You know, whenever you would like to come, just let me know. We'll have a great time together. And your mind wasn't clinging to mom. So when mom's plans changed, you didn't have to let go. Because if you hold on to mom real tight, it'll be painful when her impermanence is happening. But if you never grabbed onto her, when she said, hey, I'm going to come. Okay, great, Mom. It'll be good to see you. And then all the while, you know, this is impermanent. This is impermanent. This is impermanent. And now when she says, hey, I can't come. Hey, no worries, Mom. Do whatever you need to do. Right? So if you don't grab on with those pleasant feelings and you don't cling to that, now when things change, you can maintain your peacefulness. But if you can only be happy if mom comes, then when she doesn't come, you'll be upset. Does it make sense?
So I think maybe the key note from what I understand is not want to have like good, like to enjoy, like when my mom arrived, I will enjoy it. I know it. It's just not to depend on it. It's just not to put myself on it and depend, not having it.
Right. You're not basing your feelings on this thing, but you can thoroughly enjoy when mom comes. Hey, Mom, nice to see you. Hugs, kisses. I made this food. Let's have a good time. We have a good time. Now it's over. Okay, Mom, have a good time. Bye-bye. See you next time. Instead of, oh, you got to leave. I don't want you to leave. I'm going to miss you so much. This is just the mind holding on. It's not the love. It's the clinging and the craving, right? The mind is basing its feelings on this. And now when mom's leaving and she's departing, oh, I don't want you to leave. It was so much fun. Oh, this is over now. This is the mind not understanding impermanence. But if you understand impermanence from the very beginning, you know that mom coming or not, she may or may not come. It's impermanent. And then when she does come, this is impermanent too. So just enjoy it for what it is. And then when it's over, it's over, and you move on to the next thing. And now you enjoy that thing too, whatever that is. And that's the training. That's the practice. That's trying to get the mind to be able to do that. That's where you need the whole Eightfold Path. You have a question?
Just a question on right mindfulness. So if you've developed your mindfulness to the point where you can identify a feeling as it's commencing, say anxiety, for example, okay, I'm going to cut this off. Oh, I've still got anxiety. Like, how, is there any tools or techniques to actually develop your skills on cutting off the feeling? Because I struggle a little bit with that. Like, cutting it off once I've identified the actual feeling.
Yeah, that's where the meditation is coming in, the breathing mindfulness meditation. When we're focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath and you're letting go, that's what that is. That's training your mind to let go. But it's not going to do it right from the beginning, especially with some of these stronger cravings, right? If you have a craving to have a chocolate bar and you went into the 7-Eleven and they didn't have your chocolate, you'd probably feel the bodily sensation. You cut that off and be like, hey, it's okay. I'll get it for another day. But if you got a call that your mom was maybe in a car accident and she's being rushed to the hospital and you're noticing that craving being triggered, it's probably going to be very hard for you to cut that off at this point in your training, right? But if you train enough with your breathing mindfulness meditation and your generosity is where you're giving and sharing with others, training your mind to live open-handedly, being joyful and letting go, without any expectation of anything in return. This is also training your mind to let go. So you're going to need to accumulate enough of the benefits of breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity that your mind will let go in all situations. And then eventually you get to a point where your mind never grabs on because you realize how unwise it is to grab on to anything at all. So that's where the whole Eightfold Path is coming into play. You need that breathing mindfulness meditation and the generosity to be able to help you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me just check online, see if we have any questions here. Welcome to all of you guys online. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So what we're going to do here is it's 12:35. I know that I normally take an hour and a half lunch break, but would you guys be okay with coming back at 1:30 today? Is anybody attached to an hour and a half lunch break? No? Everybody can let that go? No? Okay, see? There we independently verified the Four Noble Truths, right? If you were craving for an hour and a half lunch, you'd be angry and frustrated right now. But you're not, because you weren't attached to it, right? So there's been some impermanence. We'd spend a little bit more time talking, so that's okay. So we'll take an hour lunch break, and I'll start back up at 1:30. We're going to talk about meditation. Okay, so enjoy your lunch break, and I'll see you guys after lunch. Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm.